Good afternoon and welcome to the Chatham Board of Selectmen's January 12th, 2021 meeting, where it's being held at 5 p.m. this evening. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone is recording the meeting, please notify me. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Selectmen is being conducted via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 134208476#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. It is important that we are able to conduct the meeting to the best of our ability tonight. And before we start the meeting, I'm going to ask that the remote participants please mute your audio and disable your video until the appropriate time to present or comment. We will begin the meeting by taking a roll call of the Board of Selectmen in order to declare a quorum. So, doing so, I'll take a roll call. Selectman Colas?
Present.
Selectman Dykens?
Present.
Selectman Metters?
Present.
Selectman Castro?
Present.
And the chair is present. I might note this may be the last time that we use the term selectmen, as that we're awaiting the governor signing the order for us to become a select board as we speak. Okay, so we have a quorum. Our next order of business is, though in our packet, it said that it was approval of the meetings 12/29/20, but we're not approving those meeting minutes. We're approving the meetings of 1/5/2021. Should we proceed with that? Motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the January 5th, 2021 minutes.
Okay, do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second, but because of the agenda difference, I know Town Council is on the phone, is on the call. Can you confirm that it's okay for us to take this action?
Yes, he is on.
Good evening.
Hi.
I'm sorry, what's the issue, Dean?
The agenda, printed agenda, says we're approving the minutes of December 29th, 2020, but actually what's in the packet and what is designated as such are the January 5th, 2021 minutes. So the question is whether we can take them. I suspect we can, but because I think it's just simply a scrivener's error.
If it is a scrivener's error, in fact, you can move forward on it. However, I would just caution the board that where a specific date of it, was there a meeting on that alternative date, or was that just
Those meeting minutes that were written on the agenda, Pat, were approved last week. It's simply a clerical error.
Okay.
Right.
I'd say under the circumstances, I'd suggest the board can move forward with it and approve them this evening.
Okay, and just take a consensus. Dean, are you fine with that decision?
Yeah.
Or that opinion, rather?
I'll second the motion. To
Okay.
approve.
Thank you, Pat. We have a motion to approve. So, I'm going to ask that anybody who's on the call or on the meeting, please mute your audio and disable your video so that we're able to, you can still hear the meeting and see the meeting. We just need you to, we're getting feedback. Peter, approval of the meeting minutes.
I do have one nit.
Okay.
Always, right?
All right. Anybody else? Well, you can raise your hand. Okay. Go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah, on page 4, 5th paragraph down, second to last line, right near the end. It's a spelling error. Shots, Will. SHOTS. That's it.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Anybody else have any additions or edits for the January 5th, 2021 meeting minutes? Nothing? Okay, we'll take a roll to approve. Dean,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and chair says aye. Okay. Meeting minutes have been approved. Okay. So now we'll take public announcements and agenda item requests. This is when you can make a general non-deliberative community announcement or request an item to be considered for an upcoming meeting. And I have an announcement. I got an email through the today that we have a soon-to-be new centenarian in town, Verna Graham, who was born January 16th, 1921. And is a longtime resident of North Chatham, will be turning 100 this week. So we'd like to wish her a very happy birthday today. So thank you. And that's all I have for announcements. Anything from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
are you, or is you kind of alluded to it a moment ago, are you or the town manager going to mention the select board legislation and the status of that?
Yeah, well, we were going to make that as a public announcement when it was actually signed by the governor, but it's sitting on his desk ready for his signature. We'll have a press release go out as soon as that's made public, and we'll speak about it more when it actually happens. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other board have a public announcement meeting? Okay. Any of the remote participants? If you do, please use the hand raising app if you're on the team meeting, or please say your name and I'll put you down. I'll note your name and then call on you. I see that Stephen Buckley has his hand up. Welcome, Stephen. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a reiteration or for a future agenda request that I had made a couple times last year. The idea of coming up with a task group on communications, with the idea of possibly having an advisory committee on communications. And I'm raising that again because there always seems to be something every month or so that points out the need for some advice on how to communicate with the public. And one of them is the fact that if we had an advisory committee, they would be able to help the town manager and the IT people come up with some better ways to improve the website, which they are asking for comments, but it's a Dropbox type of comment thing. It's not a discussional type of thing. So that would be good if there was an advisory committee. It could actually get a lot more discussion and collaboration about how to improve the website. The other thing is that I see that the Airport Commission is going to be considering a contract with a private firm for public communications and marketing. And so the idea that would be another thing that an advisory committee would be able to advise about, whether or not what parts of the town government should be hiring marketing companies to help with their public relations. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. Anybody else have a announcement or agenda item request? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Done that. Okay, so I just want to review the agenda as we have a couple of specialties tonight, as we'd say. We're going to go through, let's see, hold on, guys. I'm just going to look. First off, we're going to have our weekly COVID-19 update with Dr. Duncanson and the town manager. The public will have an opportunity to ask questions after each of their presentations. The next, I will ask for public comments where the public and the remote participants may be able to speak to issues in relationship to the business agenda items. And tonight we're going to be considering housing trusts, special legislation to expand CPA monies for affordable and attainable housing, and for funding housing opportunities through CPA and or transfer tax. After that, board discussion and those items, and very close to 6:30. We're going to have a pretty close hard stop at 6:30. We will convene on the agenda item in relationship to the Route 28 West Chatham Rotary project, and we'll have representatives from Mass DOT here to answer some questions. There will be a 3-minute limitation on for people who would like to ask them questions. We have a list of those. Followed by that, we'll have public comment period again for our business agenda items. And lastly, we'll just have final word from the board and adjourn. Okay, so that's where we're at tonight. So we'll start off with Dr. Duncanson and his coronavirus COVID-19 update for this week. Bob?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Shireen. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So just quickly, because I know you have a full agenda tonight, the numbers that just came out this afternoon indicate that in Barnstable County, there are currently 6,685 cases, and that is an increase of 116 cases since yesterday. The number of deaths in Barnstable County is currently at 277, and that is an increase of 0 from yesterday. So that is a good trend. In Chatham, we are currently at 136 cases, which is an increase of 29 cases since the board met last week. So far in January, and considering we are only at January 12th, we have had 28 cases in this month. So with that, let me share my screen quickly and just show you some of the graphs that we've been doing. Hopefully you can see the graph of our monthly cases that began, if you remember, previous to today. We had no cases in January, February of 2020, and our first cases showed up in March. December was our highest month of cases, but as you can see now with January 2021 plotted as well, through today, we are on pace to probably rival what we saw in December. At this point, both nationwide, Massachusetts, as well as Chatham, we're probably just at the beginning of the post-Christmas New Year's surge. So I suspect that these numbers will continue to increase, over the next couple of weeks before we start to see a decline again. Hopefully people aren't traveling and all like they were for the holiday period and having get-togethers and whatnot during this surge. The other figure that I wanted to show quickly, this is our total case count. You can see we had the spike between November and December of last year, and then we've gone up now to 136 cases so far for January of 2021. With that change in case counts, or that substantial increase in case counts, there has been a substantial change in the demographic outlay, if you will, of the cases. If you remember previous to this, the largest group was the basically 49-year-old to 20-year-olds. Unfortunately, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen a dramatic increase in the number of cases among the older demographic, primarily related to cases at Liberty Commons, where Broadreach had done a phenomenal job through the first, 8 months or so of this pandemic, keeping the COVID-19 out of their facilities. Unfortunately, over the last, 2 weeks or so, there has been a substantial increase in cases at Broadreach. Liberty Commons is also their facility across the street. They have been acting proactively for days to get a handle on this. And frankly, they've done a very good job. But unfortunately, it is in that older demographic where the illness tends to be more severe, and unfortunately, deaths are also more common. But hopefully, we'll see that shift back to the way it was here, in the coming weeks. So based on all these numbers that have come out recently for Chatham, as well as the Commonwealth and frankly Cape Cod as a whole, Chatham did slip into the red zone last week, along with most of the towns on the Cape from Orleans all the way over to the canal. It was only the outer Cape Town, Provincetown, the Eastham that were not in the red zone. But this is just an indication that, community spread is widespread. And we are seeing, starting to see that surge from both from Christmas as well as New Year's. And then just a couple of other things I wanted to touch on quickly, as I'm sure you're aware, and the community is aware because of the press release that went out Saturday and the robocall earlier today. We have been talking about 4 positive cases at the North Chatham Post Office. We sent out information on that, as well as there was additional information provided in the robocall that went out both Saturday and today. There has also been a letter sent by the town manager to the Northeast Regional Manager for the post office, asking that they maintain better communication with the local health department when they have cases that would impact the public. So we have that going on as well right now. And then last night at the Board of Health meeting, there was reference made to Pine Acres Realty as being another spot that may have a number of cases. We reached out to them today, spoke with them. They have 1 case among an employee, but more importantly, they have been working remotely since before New Year's. And the employee who did test positive, that occurred after that date. And so they have been closed to the public. They've been doing like a lot of businesses are, conducting all their business remotely. But I just wanted to mention that because it was raised at the Board of Health meeting last night as another potential issue. And then just lastly, quickly to touch on the vaccine issue, because I know that is a continuing of interest to you and the community. As you know, first responders vaccination started yesterday. They started today at the Orleans site. They are being conducted at multiple sites across the Cape. The Orleans site is really handling first responders all the way from Provincetown through Chatham and into Dennis. And then there's another site specifically in Barnstable because they have so many first responders. And then another site down in the Sandwich area that is handling that part of the Cape. By all indications, and I was on a call earlier today with Sean O'Brien from the county, the Orleans site is going very well. They're managing to get people through fairly quickly. Like most sites, it is by appointment only, so that helps. But that will continue through this week and going forward. And then in addition, we had our call this afternoon with the county as well as with DPH, where there was a lot of information passed about vaccine and rollout and whatnot. There has been some additional modifications to the priority list, which the state is getting up on their website. As you probably heard, at the federal level, there has been a recommendation, really 2 recommendations. One, to go ahead and dispense all the vaccine and not continue to hold back some of the vaccine for second doses. It's still unclear when and how that's going to occur. But there was also some guidance to consider starting people 65 and older earlier in phase 2. That has been talked about at the federal level. It has not been yet adopted by Massachusetts. There will probably be more to come over the next several days and into early next week about how Massachusetts may alter their timing. As well as the state is also looking at and actively moving forward with setting up mass vaccination sites. Places like the Big E, Gillette Stadium, Boston is looking at Fenway Park. And we are also talking with the county about how that might be rolled out here on the Cape Cod, whether there will be mass vaccination sites at 1 or 2 locations, or the towns will go it individually and, similar to what we do for flu vaccinations. But there are a number of logistic issues such as vaccine storage, availability of nurses, and all those kinds of things that need to be worked out. But hopefully there will be more definitive information. Well, I shouldn't say hopefully. There will be more definitive information coming out, over the next couple of weeks with regard to vaccine. So the best advice to give members of the public is, if you're really interested in where you would fit into the various priority categories and when these things are going to be opening up, I strongly urge people to go to the state's vaccine website. They are keeping that updated on a regular basis, definitely on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and frankly, every day if things change drastically. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bob. So a couple things on the vaccine side of it. On our reopening task force, there was Sean O'Brien did a somewhat call to action to the group. I didn't realize that the county has a medical reserve corps, and people can sign up, and if they have, and they can sign up and volunteer. So if there is mass vaccination, if you go on the county website, you can see that it anywhere from being medical assistance to admin volunteerism. It's pretty easy to fill out the form and all the requirements that are there. As far as the North Chatham incident and reaching out to the Boston district manager, I had a call into Congressman Keating's office to Andrew Nelson. I don't know if he got a hold of you today.
He did.
And able to talk to the DC office and realize the post office isn't very forthcoming in sharing the information to local agencies. So therein lies the rub on a communication issue that seemed to be problematic over the weekend, with expectations that we would have answers immediately on that issue. So, but the other piece that I wanted to mention was, we do have federal assets in this community other than the post office. We have the Coast Guard station and we have Monomoy Wildlife Refuge. So Andrew had said that he was going to reach out to the Coast Guard station, which he did, and just to better communications amongst us, the town, and them. It's always good to have it anyway, and we do it on so many other levels. But just to reassure that the community that we are in communication with those agencies as well. So any questions from the board? I see that Dean has his hand up. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, I was going to ask about the over 65 vaccinations issue. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I did read in the media or heard in the media that the governor of New York has moved 65 and over group up on the priority list, and I'm hoping we can see that happen in Massachusetts soon. Now, my question has to do with the hospitalization rates. How do they look in the county in particular?
The hospitalization rates, they've come down a little bit. Both hospitals still have, in the low 20s number of people. And as you can imagine, it varies from day to day. But they've been unfortunately holding fairly steady in that range, with 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the ICU. Primarily at Cape Cod Hospital. The numbers in Falmouth always tend to be a little lower. But that's where we've been trending for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you, Serene.
You're welcome. Any other board members have a question for Bob? Okay. Any of the remote participants, if you have a question, please raise your hand or speak out your name. Anybody who would like to ask a question to Dr. Duncanson? Okay, I see Elaine. Go ahead, Elaine.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question on the 29 people, the increase over last week. Does that include the, pardon me, the Broadreach? I think there were 7 patients there. Are they counted in us or in the towns they come from?
That number generally does include the Broadreach patients.
Okay. And that would be, and that included the 2 residents from the North Chatham Post Office are in that 29?
If they are Chatham residents, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Duncanson from the remote participants? Okay, I don't see any. I will, thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, have a good evening. Jill, town manager's update for?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one item is that the park before and after school daycare program did start today. So they were going strong with a lot of happy parents and children.
Good.
And that's all that I have to report.
That's good to hear. Yes. Any questions for Jill? Any questions from the remote participants for Jill? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. Okay, this is the time that we'll accept public comments on our business agenda items. And again, I'll reiterate what those are. Consideration for housing trusts, special legislation to expend community preservation funds for affordable and attainable housing, and funding options. Board request for CPA, and consider local funding option transfer tax. Are there any public comments? I see one from the remote participants. Mr. Messina.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You guys caught me. I thought it was a 6 o'clock meeting, but so I put my leftover lasagna aside to ask a quick question and one comment. I would have spoken relative to agenda. I just wanted to confirm publicly that the Board of Selectmen is meeting, I believe it's January 26th, on the further consideration of the utilization of the historic U.S. Coast Guard. Is that correct?
It's tentatively planned. It's tentatively planned, Frank.
Understand.
Okay.
Understand. Thank you.
Right.
And if I may just quickly comment on the issue of the item B in the agenda. I don't know too much about it, but I see it says special legislation to expend Community Preservation Act CPA funds for affordable and attainable housing. And I assume you have some kind of a letter or potential legislation that you're going to forward to the legislature. I see the town council, Mr. Casello, is listed there. I guess without really having an opportunity, and I will listen to the comments on what your objectives are, I would ask you to really seriously consider if that's something that we want to do as a community. I was a member of the Community Preservation Committee for a number of years. In fact, served with Florence Selden, who I see is on the list of speakers, and was vice chair for a while. There's always a sense of other uses for the community preservation funds, but the original act was very clear relative to the three things that we were going to put aside money for: historic preservation, housing, and open space. Now, recreation was added when there was an outcry, if you will, that we needed more ball fields and things like that, and wasn't going to fight it. But I think the concept of affordable housing is a worthy goal for the selectmen, and I know you guys are working hard. But looking at you currently have almost 600,000, if not 500,000, which was originally set aside for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I know you have some potential things that the board would like to do, but I'm going to use a word now. I'm rating, if I will, the Community Preservation Act funds is not the place to do it, in my opinion. If in fact this truly is a significant or worthy project, I think the town meeting 2/3 vote, whether or not we want to expend a significant amount of money. CPA is a simple majority. It's the wrong way to put money aside for something as important as affordable housing. And I strongly agree, affordable housing. Not sure what the term attainable housing means, but I assume we'll get some more definition of that. So anyway, those are my comments, and thank you very much. I appreciate your time for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Our next commenter is Select Board Member Selden. Lawrence?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I know that you recall that a subcommittee of the Finance Committee had presented a report on affordable housing after they did a lot of study and a lot of research. it's an excellent report, and I hope at some time that you will take it up in detail. It deals with various organizational, logistical issues. But one of the things that they also talk, there's a section on financing, and I want to talk about that briefly in light of the items that are on the board's agenda today. One of their proposals was to increase the minimum annual contribution of CPA funds designed for community housing. And that's the term community housing that's used in the CPA. This can easily be done. The Provincetown, for example, sets aside 60% annually of their CPA funds. I noticed that next year, Orleans is asking for 80% of $2 million actually of their CPC funding because they have a project. They are looking at use of the former Cape Cod 5 facility for rental housing. Nantucket, for example, in 2019, set aside from CPC funds $5 million. So that's doable. We could certainly do that, and I would urge you in your discussions tonight to think about that. You can go up to 80% on affordable housing in 1 year. However, I think that it would sit better if we had some sort of a project rather than just ask for funds from CPC to tuck away in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Right now, or at least in 2019, and it may be more now, and we'll hear that later, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund had $1.1 million in it. There are some other, obviously, recommendations for funding from that subcommittee, but I'm focusing on that. Other towns have built affordable and attainable housing using CPA funds without resorting to home rule petitions to the legislature, like on the agenda, and therefore asking to change the CPA legislation. I hope you will not use this as a delaying tactic, but move ahead. I urge you to find a project soon and fund it by increasing what you can do from CPC. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Stephen Buckley.
Yes, just to clarify about the public comment policy for the West Chatham portion of the agenda we'll be able to ask questions at that point? Okay.
Yes, yes.
And just wanted to make a comment that I hopefully will be able to pull up some maps so we just don't look at our faces and we can point to the 100% design versus what was actually built. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Levitt, Rick.
Am I unmuted, Shireen?
You are. Go right ahead.
Well, great. I guess I'm going to just start with a question. How much longer will Chatham's working families struggle with the high cost of housing before Chatham becomes hauled out an exclusive retirement and summer community, a enclave? I talked with some of you about this, and we visited 2 very successful, affordable, attainable housing neighborhoods in Brewster and in Dennis, located in their historic village centers on Route 6A. These attractive housing developments, one recently completed, one under construction, were made possible by an innovative town-led public-private partnership. Each neighborhood consists of small Nantucket-style homes surrounding a village green in traditional Cape Cod fashion. Public-private partnerships consisted of town officials working together with planning professionals at Coastal Engineering Company and with an experienced builder. These attractive neighborhoods meet the pressing need for lower cost housing and fit well aesthetically within higher density village centers. Chatham has a rare opportunity today to provide similar lower cost housing on 3 acres of available prime land in West Chatham Village. This is the kind of project that Florence just spoke of. You can take advantage of that opportunity now by contacting John Bologna of Coastal Engineering in Orleans. I spoke with John this morning. He has offered to share his knowledge of the Brewster and Dennis affordable attainable housing developments. Town-led public and private initiatives accelerate sorely needed affordable attainable housing and get this, with minimal taxpayer funding. Thank you, Shireen.
Thank you, Mr. Levitt. Okay. Any other remote participants would like to speak to any of the public comments? I mean, during the public comment period, sorry. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I'm sorry about that. All right. Seeing none. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to our business agenda. This is board discussion items. And the first one is affordable attainable housing initiatives and funding sources. So this is consideration for housing trust. We have Mass Housing Partnership, Shelley Gorig Ring. Is that how you pronounce it, Allie? I'm not sure. Garrig. Sorry about that. With a name like Shireen, I'm try to be sensitive to people's mispronouncing names. Was invited to give us an overview of different trusts. So I'm going to turn it over to Allie, I guess, right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here tonight. As you all know, we do have a municipal affordable housing trust. It's made up of the 5 members of the Board of Selectmen and 2 members at large. It funds projects up to 100% AMI or $96,600 for a family of 4, just to put that in perspective. The board in the past has discussed potentially changing the makeup of the trust. So we invited Shelley Gehring from Mass Housing Partnership to come and talk to you about other successful trusts in the town, in other towns in Massachusetts, their makeup, and just some helpful tips that she can pass on. And then also, as a second part of the agenda report, we do talk about potentially creating an attainable housing trust, and I can talk about that in more detail after Shelley finishes. So I believe Shelley is on the call.
Okay. So I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Shelley.
So I do have my baby with me, and I didn't have coverage tonight. So I'm going to leave my camera off just so because I'm bouncing her. I don't want to be distracting to anyone. So I'm very sorry that I'm not on camera. So my name is Shelley Gehring, and I work at MHP, Mass Housing Partnership. We are a quasi-state agency in the state. We're focused on increasing the supply of affordable housing across the state. And my work has really focused on helping communities create municipal affordable housing trusts, as well as helping them to kind of develop them and to be a bit more effective. We do a lot of trainings and technical assistance. So I've known Allie now for several years in our work in a couple different communities. And so with the municipal affordable housing trust, so I'm just going to go a little bit over what the statute requires, the baseline of what the statute requires with the board for an affordable housing trust, and then a little bit of kind of examples about how other communities have built out their affordable housing trust boards. So the statute really is very simple. It just says that you need a minimum of 5 members, that 1 must be the chief executive officer. So in a town with a board of selectmen, that's 1 member of the board of selectmen would need to be on the trust. And then that there are 2-year terms, and that's all that the statute requires. There are many communities in their bylaw, when they create an affordable housing trust, they may add some additional direction. But what we see is, and I actually haven't added this up, but what's typical is that communities have 5, 7, or 9 members of their trust. If I were to bet, I would say that the most common is 7 members. So not just the baseline of 5. It's pretty typical that members are residents of the community, but that's not in every community. We do have some communities that have members that do not live in the town or the city. Some communities may specify that members should be appointed that have some kind of experience in different categories, and they might list the categories. We at MHP encourage communities to not be too prescriptive about who has to sit on your housing trust board, because it could make it difficult for you to fill seats down the road. But some communities may say that the Board of Selectmen should try to appoint folks with experience in housing development, affordable housing, and real estate, in law, real estate law, some of these kind of categories, they might encourage that. Some communities will specify that certain boards need to have a representative on the housing trust. And again, just a cautionary tone is that oftentimes there are folks in our towns that sit on a board, sit on many boards, and you just want to make sure that you're appointing people to the housing trust who can actually commit the time and show up to meetings and really be take an active role. The trustees are appointed by the select board. And so while most communities seem to have 5, 7, or 9, I only know of a couple that have over 10 members, Salem and Brookline. That's a pretty large board. So that's pretty unusual. And then just some examples of, so Brewster, a community not too far from you, they have a 7 members on their board. So a member of the select board is represented. They do have a staff member, their town administrator sits on their board. So it's somewhat uncommon to have municipal staff on the board, but it's not unheard of. So this is Brewster as an example of having a municipal staff person on the board. That's not just a volunteer on a board. Their housing partnership is represented on their Affordable Housing Trust. Their CPC, their Community Preservation Committee, is represented on their housing trust. Their planning board is represented, and then they have 2 residents at large on their housing trust board. So that's how they've built their 7-member board. Orleans has 5 to 7 members on their board. It's only residents, and they have a member of their select board. So it's less prescriptive than Brewster. So Beverly, a city on the North Shore, they are the only community that I know of where a majority of their members are actually municipal staff. So they have a 5-member board. 3 are staff. So the mayor sits on it and he's active on their trust. Their director of planning and community development sits on their housing trust, and their finance director sits on their trust, and then 2 members at large. So what I'm trying to demonstrate is that we see communities have, it's all across the board. Communities have decided many different structures for their board, different ways to model it, different ways to prescribe who should or should not be on. Some communities just accept the statute as it's written, and so they have no prescription around who should be on it or how many members, other than just the baseline of 5. So it's open to any community. It's reflective of kind of how you see your needs and the communication that you want in between boards, and your capacity to fill the board with people who can be really active members. So are there questions? Can we open it to questions if the
Sure, we can do that. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any questions from the board going at this time? Any questions for Shelley? Because I simply have comments. I just, when we framed the discussion for us to go forward with this, it was to look at, I think it was probably Brewster's model as one that had representation from different aspects of the community that could probably drive the process a little more. to dismiss, like, I mean, we do have our 5 members of the Board of Selectmen, and then we have 2 at-large members. And we've been fortunate enough to nominate those members who are representatives of the Affordable Housing, the Community Housing Partnership, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we have a direction where we've looked at our membership in a way that drives it more into that world of housing and development. And I think in some of our discussions, we had talked about the idea of having somebody on the from the planning board representing the trust too. So, I think that's what has driven this process, to get a better understanding of how boards are made up and in different communities. Is there any questions for Shelley? I think Peter has his hand up. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Shelley, if I heard you correctly, excuse me, most of the ones that you're familiar with, there's either one or very few members of the Board of Selectmen that are on there, or none, where we have like 5. And in some ways, I like the idea just generally that we would have more public participation on the board. Exactly how you make it up, I'm not sure, but did I understand you correctly on that?
Yeah, so the communities where the board is primarily made up of the select board, they tend to be very inactive because the select board is so busy with other things. It's really hard to focus on affordable housing. So the statute requires 1 representative from the Board of Selectmen, and that's really important. It is a municipal board. There's a relationship with the community. It's part of the community, and then having that communication, I think that's really important. In a city, it's the mayor that sits on the board. So there has to be representation, but not having everyone because the Board of Selectmen is so busy. And one of the benefits, to speak to Shireen a little bit, one of the benefits is that this is a board that can focus just on affordable housing. A select board could never just focus on affordable housing. So to have a group of people where they can really dig in and they can really learn and get a better understanding and really kind of become, quote, experts in the community around affordable housing and what the town is doing for affordable housing, that's really important to help move some of your goals forward with affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would agree. I guess the only other comment I'd make is, whether you put someone on a staff on, for instance, we'd have Ally anyway, right? I mean, she'd be representative to it. And how you pick which other ones go on. That's a good discussion. But I like the number of 7. Why? I don't know. It sounds good to me because you get just enough, and you can get a quorum most of the time. And if this is I guess, like I said, 2, 3, 4 people that are from the local community, how prescriptive we are, I'm not sure we have to be. We can decide that as you go, who comes up and volunteers, I guess. But I'm willing to talk about that on whether or not we need to have, quote, experts of one area or another. Thank you,
just in response to that a little bit, I'm so sorry, the baby's just a little bit chatty.
That's all right.
We generally suggest that a community try to have some sort of paid staff support for the Affordable Housing Trust, and that can be administrative, it can be more program oriented. So in Brewster, they didn't put the town planner, they put a town administrator, assistant town administrator, and they do have a housing coordinator. In Chatham, I don't know if Ally would potentially be providing some support for the trust, but she may not be the best to sit on the trust. If she is, to be providing some support, just as an FYI, that we do suggest that you consider some staff support if it doesn't already exist.
Yep. Right. Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Yes, definitely. Jeff, you're next.
Thanks, Shireen. Thanks, Shelley. So Shelley, I'm going to put you on the spot maybe just a little bit, and it follows up with Peter's line of questions. What's your favorite model? The favorite makeup? The one you think is the most efficient, that gets stuff done most efficiently. What's the makeup?
That's so not fair.
I know. Isn't that awful? But the thing is, you're the expert, and that's why you're here.
It's going to sound like I'm going around your question, but there's so much. It has so much to do with the dynamics in the community and the capacity of the community. I think that you need to consider how many seats you can legitimately keep filled with people who are really committed to the mission. This board really needs to be, in order to be effective, it really needs to be a working board. It needs people who don't just show up, but who really are going to dig in and help and really learn the topic. So in some communities, they have a hard time filling seats on boards because they just have too many boards or they just don't have enough volunteers. So that might limit how many people you have or how prescriptive you are as well. Some communities, they don't, like one community said, well, we didn't really have anyone that had experience in affordable housing or that were realtors that were potentially available or housing developer and those kinds of skills. But we had project managers, so people who know how to move things forward. And so they kept theirs more open and not as prescriptive. I have found that for a smaller town, how Brewster has moved forward, not necessarily how prescriptive they've been. They're actually more prescriptive on who sits on their trust than we would suggest at MHP. But they did that because they felt like that's what they needed in the local community for communication and representation and experience. But I think they're a great model to look at in terms of their thoughtfulness of who they did appoint to their board, and then doing the initial groundwork of kind of housing needs analysis, putting together some goals that they're working on, being very methodical and engaging the community in that. So they're, in terms of kind of a town that might be a little bit more similar to you than like a Beverly, because I think Beverly has a great model too, but they're a city, you know, they're bigger, they have different kind of capacity. I think that Brewster is actually a really nice example for Chatham to consider. Not necessarily how prescriptive they are with who sits on the trust. You might want that, you might not, but definitely kind of their thoughtfulness and how they've considered building their capacity to support affordable housing.
Super. Thank you, Shelley. It was good. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Corey, you next.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I mean, obviously there are several different models. What it boils down to is the engagement of the members to put forth the efforts, you know, in the time. You know, just you know, I have a preference for a 7-member trust. I actually would like to see it being made up of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen and 5 members of the public. Not necessarily staff. I think staff is sometimes overtasked with certain things, so I don't want to. I think we are fortunate as a community to have a very large pool of candidates out there who would be more than qualified to help serve the town in this capacity. So, you know, this is just my general thoughts. A 7-member committee, 5 at large, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, because I think collectively the 5 of us are on the same page with the affordable attainable housing. So, you know, obviously we go to 3, it becomes a Board of Selectmen board. So the 2 is the magic number in my mind. But I think this is the time, and I know there's people in the public out there who we can tap into that would serve this committee trust very well.
Thank you, Corey. Dean, comments?
Thank you. I guess we've gone into the discussion mode here. So I'm going to echo what Corey just said. I favor a 7-person board with 2 select board members. I'll use the new term. And I don't think we should be prescriptive on the other 5. I think we should open it to the public. I'd be interested in the next topic that I think you're going to take up, which is whether you should have what you do for attainable housing. Do you have a separate trust, or do you have one body, which I'm inclined to prefer, because it's less cumbersome if you have one group, and it may be easier to recruit people for. I guess the question is, how do you segregate the funds? Because some of these funds are going to be sourced from the Community Preservation Act, and unless our special legislation is enacted, we're going to have to make sure that those funds are kept accounted for separately, and perhaps Alex may comment on that. But anyway, those are my comments at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Ally, I don't know if you can recall when the Affordable Housing Trust was established. Do you know when it was established for the town?
I believe it was in 2006. Yes, 2006.
And it's always been the same makeup, or similar to just the 5 members of the Board of Selectmen and 2 at-large members.
Yes, it's actually in the warrant or the article that was passed at town meeting.
Yes. Okay, and I think Select Board member Selden was part of the Affordable Housing Committee at that time, or the advocacy group that was working on that. So we haven't seen a lot of projects. What kind of projects have we had since 2006 aside from Habitat on affordable housing? We've purchased in my time as a board member in the last 3 years, we've purchased had a private-public partnership and purchased a place on Kroll Road, a home for the rental program. What else have we done?
I believe that there is the 2 Habitat projects, but I'm unsure if there is any other.
But other than the Habitat, so we haven't really had a great success rate, is what I'm trying to say, in getting the job done as a Board of Selectmen. Pretty much what Shelley was speaking to in the success rates of what models are working the best. And honestly, it is an arduous task to begin with. Working town government and going through the process of this isn't easy anyway. But I really feel that having motivated community members with representation of the Board of Selectmen is a really good way to go. And I agree with Corey and Dean that there should be 2 representatives from the board on that committee. I've always thought that there should be representatives from some sort of a regulatory board, like the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and representatives from the Community Housing Partnership, because I think it just, at least from the Community Housing Partnership, it would create a dynamic that gives a flow of information and it sort of brings the whole thing together, working together. And so we don't have a motion yet or anything, but I know that Peter has his hand up, so I'm just let him speak. Peter, comment?
Yeah, just not to reiterate one thing. I don't have a problem with two selectmen on the board. I'm not sure we have I like a representative from the housing partnership. However, my comment really wasn't that. I was thinking out loud. I don't think I have a strong opinion. I think we should have 2 or 3 members from the community on the housing trust. Those that want, that are motivated to do affordable, attainable housing. Just to make a point, the discussion on affordable housing has been taken up by a number of committees over the last years. Back in 2006, 2007, 2008, the move to trying to get something done with that has been difficult within the town, because there was in my humble opinion, there was not a recognition of the real need, and the recognition of that real need is growing dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years. And that need, as was asked by a person previously, what is attainable housing? Well, the problem is when affordable housing, the law, and I don't know exactly what day it is, that is a very prescriptive law or direct law. It tells you what affordable housing is based upon the average mean income that's there, and that's it. You go $1 over that, and you don't. You can't. You're not eligible for affordable housing. And we're going to get into this next, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I will make this comment. What was affordable then for a group of people has now expanded to attainable. People cannot afford to live on Cape Cod, and especially in Chatham, if they make a decent salary. That's a median income salary that gets close to 6 figures, and they cannot afford to live in the town. And that is the need. So that is from where the prescriptive affordable housing is, which is, we have a chart in our package, which is 80% of AMI, average mean income, or up to 100. But we need to go to 160 and 180 just to get folks that are working together that have, a young family and 2 kids, or a young professional that's working. It doesn't have to be a professional, anybody who's working, to be able to live in this town. And that it's affordable and attainable also includes, has to include rentals. So that's all I wanted to say as a start.
So the makeup, Peter, is what you're saying, the makeup of this trust should be inclusive of both affordable and attainable, where we've been looking at it from a perspective of just attainable. So, I'm totally agreement with you. And I think that if we could make it up that way, I don't think separate trusts really is the way to go after looking at all this. I think we could simultaneously work within a trust to be able to work on things and know where each pocket is going and coming. Shelley, you got your hand up, so I'm sure you're going to add some input here. Go ahead.
I just wanted to respond a little bit to a few things that are being said. So one, when there are different housing groups, like a housing authority, like a partnership, we do suggest that there be conversation about the roles of these different entities. That sometimes in communities, they're stepping on toes, that people are not certain about who's doing what. And so we do absolutely, whether that's someone from the partnership sitting on the trust, or whether that's just kind of an exercise of determining early on who's doing what, who's responsible for what, is very important. The trust statute, the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Statute, does not define low and moderate income, but it does specifically say that it's to create and preserve housing for low and moderate income households. So we do suggest that you look at the existing definitions for low and moderate income in the state. If you want units on the subsidized housing inventory, that's 80% of the area at median income. CPA goes to 100% of the area median income. The state's affordable housing trust goes up to 110% of the area at median income. But if you're talking about going up to 160 or 180, that could open the community up to issues if you don't have really special permission to define moderate income at that high of a rate.
Okay.
And we always encourage that trusts have current data of housing needs in their community so that you have a good sense of who is the most cost burdened, and that you're using that as you decide your program.
Thank you. Dean.
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock, Madam Chair, and
I know.
want to 6:30, and this is a meaty item. I was about to offer a motion to try to get this moving, but I would like to know, there are a couple of other communities, in light of something Shelley just said, who are going above 110. What special exemptions have they gotten from the state, perhaps, in order to be able to fund up to 160 or slightly less than that?
80.
I don't know if Shelley heard my
Go ahead,
question.
Shelley, you're muted.
Rule petition, I think.
So you may know that P-Town has a separate middle income trust fund, so they separated it out from their Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And islands, at least, I'm so sorry, Nantucket has the ability to define, I think they have special legislation to define middle, moderate income higher.
Yeah.
And I don't know about other communities if they've actually taken steps with the legislature or not. I don't know if Ally knows.
Did Provincetown have to get special legislation?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Dean. Yes.
Provincetown.
Yes.
Yes, they had a special legislation to create a middle income housing trust.
And maybe we need to have special legislation to create a combined trust, because I would rather have one trust, assuming, again, if our finance director is on the call, I don't know if she is, we could properly segregate and account for the funds that are sourced differently, because I think we'll be held to that. I guess Ally wants to speak.
Alex is on the call. Do you want to answer that, Alex, and then we'll go to Ally?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I think I would prefer to have two separate trust funds, but I think you could have one affordable housing trust fund membership that would oversee both the funds. I think it would just be cleaner for our sake. And I could reach out to my colleague in Provincetown to see, how they have set it up there, just to get an idea.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
So
Al-
I'm ready to launch the motion. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I think Ally wanted to add something in first, Dean.
Yeah.
I don't know whose phone is ringing, but we can't answer it. Sorry. Go ahead, Ellen.
So yeah, I just wanted to, if we wanted to move on to the next topic about potentially creating an attainable housing trust through special legislation, I'd be happy to talk about that in more detail. And in the staff report, it does talk about Provincetown and also Nantucket and how much percentage AMI they are using for their attainable housing trusts. So I would be happy to go into it further now if you want, or if you wanted to, make the motion, whatever is up to the board.
Dean, would you like to make your motion and we'll move it forward? Okay, Go ahead.
I move that the board direct staff to prepare a town meeting warrant article for for the annual town meeting in 2021 to change the membership makeup of the Affordable Housing Trust, possibly the name, which would include a board of 7 members, 2 selectmen, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, and 1 representative from the Housing Partnership, Community Housing Partnership, to be recommended by that body, but appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I'll second that. That's
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion?
The rest would be public members. The rest of the membership would be public members, the other 4 appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
All right. Okay, any other further discussion? Jeff, your hand's up.
Yes, just to be clear then, there's 2 selectmen, 1 from the Community Housing Partnership that we would vote upon. They'd recommend, we'd vote. That's 3, and then be 4 at-large members from the community, just to be clear.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's the motion.
Okay. Any further discussion before we take a vote on that? Okay, I'm going to take a vote. Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
And chair says aye. All right. Okay. Do we want to move into the Attainable Housing Trust itself and discuss that? Ally was going to give us an overview. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So we're already kind of discussing it, so I'll just kind of quickly go into it. Since the board's, already considering potentially changing, and you've made the motion now, changing the makeup of the Affordable Housing Trust, we just wanted to bring to the board the potential, because I know it's been discussed in the past with the board and I think other committees in town, potentially creating an attainable housing trust. So as we were just discussing, there's 2 options that we can go forward. We can create, if the board wants to, a completely separate attainable housing trust. That would be separate from the Affordable Housing Trust. There would be 2 separate committees, 2 separate memberships, or we could potentially combine it. We could have both the Attainable and the Affordable Housing Trust as one. So it would be the same membership, but as we were just discussing, it would need to be 2 pots of money. So there's pros and cons, I guess, to both. It really, I think, is a policy question at this point, how the board wants to go with that. But we also really need to discuss that if we do want to create this attainable housing trust, what is the maximum AMI percentage that we should kind of gauge it to, because this would have to be done through special legislation. I know Pat's on the call too, and we have discussed this in the past with him as well. So we would really have to make sure we identify kind of all of those aspects. And just some things for the board to consider when we're thinking about potentially creating the Attainable Housing Trust. This would obviously be a town entity, so it would be subject to procurement laws, which obviously are pros and cons there. We would have to consider a funding source for this trust. So I know we're going to discuss the special legislation for CPC funds over 100% AMI. It could also be done through free cash, potentially the short-term rental tax, or another funding source. And so the next thing, bringing it back to kind of that question, the policy question of what is the max AMI that we should do. And, you know, as examples, Provincetown's year-round market rate trust, they fund between 80% to 200% AMI. And that 200% AMI, it goes for a family of four of 193,200. So just to give you that kind of range. And then Nantucket's Affordable Housing Trust, it allows 50% to 160% AMI. In the packet as well, there is also a chart that shows all of the monetary figures that go along with this, so it's easier to kind of understand. But as the board's considering that AMI percentage, the max, I just wanted to kind of give you some information about from the Cape Cod Commission in 2015, the median sale price in Chatham was $725,000. So the income needed to affordably own that for a family in Chatham would have to be $160,845. So that's kind of pushing that towards that 200% AMI range. And so I just, you know, I think the board, it sounds like a lot of money when we say 200% AMI, $193,200 for a family of four. But when you compare it to the sales prices of homes in Chatham, you know, it's hard to afford something like that. And then again, we also put in the packet income needed to affordably rent. It's about $41,000. But that comes with another layer of we don't have a lot of rentals at all in Chatham. It's very difficult to find one. I hear so many examples of not being able to find a rental. And so that kind of comes with a different layer. But I just wanted to also put that number out there for the board to consider. So I'm here if you have any questions. I know I went through that kind of quickly.
It was thank you. It was in the packet, and I can't drive home living here all my life. How I've heard the struggles of people wanting to stay here and live here and work here. And it's, you know, when we look at what we do need affordable housing, but we need people in town. We need attainable housing for people to live and work here as well. And if you are overqualified for affordable housing, yet you can't afford to live here, then we're going to have a disparity of wealth within the community. We're going to have, and it will not create a better, diverse, more inclusive community on an income level. And so creating an attainable housing trust is really, I think, crucial to towns like Chatham, just simply on the makeup of what we need to get folks in town. The rental issue is just beyond, it's always been beyond scope. When somebody puts something up to rent, you just watch, listen to how many people will call on one rental just looking for a place to live. And if you want to be a shell fisherman in town, you have to have a required residency here in town. So, I mean, that's a job creation sort of housing partnership that people don't consider, that can be an opportunity for some. But Shelley, your hand has been up for a while. Did you have something you wanted to add, or are we? I guess not.
Oops, no, I didn't realize I need to put it down. Sorry.
No worries. Peter, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a couple of comments. First, I'm going to reinforce something you said that had to do with what we have in town. Excuse me a second. I'm still here. My computer did its own thing. Okay, I'm back. A comment about attainable housing and why we need it in town. Never mind, it's not that I'm discounting it. Never mind the differences in wealth. If we continue the way we're going right now, and it sure looks like it is, the critical problem we have is we're not going to have any young people. We're not going to have an elementary school. We're going to have put up a sign and say, welcome to Chatham, 55 plus community. And oh, by the way, we have a very historic place here you can come and look at. We become what Dean, I think, coined the phrase, we become a museum. So that to me is this is not the sky is falling. Just take a look over the last 4 or 5 years, what's happening in this town. And a lot of that is because of the economic position that we're in. We're seasonal community and so forth, but we have zoning that also enables it. I know some people will complain about that, but it's true. Rentals, I think we have to build rentals, and they have to be year-round rentals. The problem with a lot of people over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer than that, they're in a rental, and summer comes along, they get kicked out. How many times have you heard about that? Because the rentals can be, the individuals can get more money during the summer. So we need those. Just to make a point on Ally's charts that she puts here, and I'm glad she continues to upgrade them. But if you look at the median income in Barnstable County, it's $96,600, right? To buy a home in Chatham, which is probably, that looks like 2015 numbers. I may or may not. Yes, 2015 numbers. You need $160,000. You look at the chart across the board, AMI. What is a normal family now? It used to be, 2 plus 2, 2 plus my 2.5 kids. Well, it's not that anymore. It's 2 plus 1 and maybe 2. And if you have an income of somewhere around 96,000, you can get affordable housing. In certain areas, but if you're a family with 3 people, 160% AMI is $140,000. If you've been out of the market for a long time, and job markets and whatever, I remember when $100,000 was a big deal. I remember when $10,000 was a big deal. I go way back. But the point is, right now, $100,000, people will not be able to stay here, and they'll just move on. So I just want to make the point that we need to go up to, I believe, start at $200,000 and tell me why we shouldn't do 200% AMI and why we should go down to 160 or 180. That's kind of my position.
Okay. I just want to pause here for a minute. I know that we have a start at 6:30 for MassDOT, and I'll let us speak to this issue a little while longer. We have Pat on the call for the CPA funds legislation. So I want to get that out of the way before we get to the state. So I don't want to push this if if people feel that we need to move this along, we can, I just want to say that as we go forward. Corey, you had your hand up.
I'll make my comments very, very brief.
Thanks, Corey.
Affordable and attainable housing go hand in hand in this community, and what our focus is for the future of Chatham. Having the one committee, 2 separate financial funds makes a whole lot of sense, makes Alex's job easier. Happy with that. Okay. Based on the numbers, I think the AMI is going to be more in line with Provincetown. Obviously, with the higher end, more around 200,000. These are the numbers that we're dealing with. We're not pulling them out of the air, but these are the numbers we're going to have to take a serious look at. So, based on that, I think we can, move this forward, and I will stop from there. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. And we plan to have a follow-up discussion on this, guys, if we need to. So I'll just say that. Ally, next.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll have another discussion if the board, it's obviously time is tight. So.
Right. Sorry about this rush job, guys. Dean?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Ally, for the information. I just wanted to say that the vote we just took, the language was broad enough to allow for the creation of a single trust, which would oversee 2 different funds, as Alex was presenting. And I even made it flexible enough to change the name of the trust so it wasn't limited to affordable housing. And as far as the maximum amount, we could set that whenever the draft comes in. If there's sentiment tonight, we can do it tonight. And I don't have a fixed number. Peter makes a good case for 200%. I think Corey was endorsing that as well, if I heard him right. And the last thing I would say, depending on what happens with the next sub-agenda item, it could all be wrapped into one piece of legislation. And the CPA piece could be a section of that statute. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll make the circle complete here. I think we look at the higher end of the AMI. I think we model ourselves after P-Town. I think one trust, two funds that Alex runs. I think we look for alternative funding sources, and I hope I'll be able to speak on one of them this evening. I don't know if that's going to get pushed aside. I strongly prefer it would not. I feel very strongly that we should be in the rental game. We should be in the buying land and development game with private and public partnerships, that we should be in the buying houses that folks can afford game. I think it's, Julie reminds me of this, but I think it's funny that, we have such a push for historic preservation in the town, and I'm all for it. But then we have the descendants of those that have been here for generations that can't afford and live in the town. And so we're really not preserving our social lineage. We're preserving our housing lineage, if you will, our houses and our edifices, but we're not really preserving the nature and the substance of the town. So I think all we can do here is extremely important and extremely important as we craft this going forward. And I think you're doing a great job keeping it in the forefront, Shereen. Thank you very much. And I hope to speak to my tax later on, my mansion tax. Thank you.
Yes, and Jeff, you will. We're going to push that to maybe after, but I think we have a consensus from the board to move forward with all of this. And thank you, Ally. Shelley, thank you very much for your input tonight. It was very helpful. And I hope that little baby of yours has gone to bed.
Thanks so much.
Okay. We're going to do one more agenda. Thank you. One more agenda item and then we'll move on to MassDOT. This agenda item is on the a special legislation to expend the Community Preservation Act funds for affordable and attainable housing. Selectman Nicastro brought this up, and we have Town Council Pat Costello on the call. So I don't know who would like to go first, but Dean, did you want to kick it off, or?
I'm happy to do it. I'll be very brief. Okay. A couple of weeks ago, I quoted Mrs. Roosevelt, and tonight I'm going to quote Cole Porter from the same period, who said, "Times have changed. The Community Preservation Act is 20 years old, and as Peter pointed out, the notion of affordable has moved into the realm of attainability. I really do think it's time to update the availability of CPA funding so that we can use it for affordable housing, however we define that. I suspect we're going to run into some likely opposition from the CPA community around the state who are going to feel threatened. They have a very significant, President Eisenhower would have called it an industrial complex. So we'd be up against that, but I do think it's an important piece of legislation unique to Chatham, certainly unique to the Cape, and I think it's worth taking a crack at it to see if it could be enacted in the legislature. So with that, I'm just going to turn to Pat because he's drafted the language, and I think he updated it this morning as well. So thank you, Pat.
Welcome, Pat.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting discussion tonight. And one thing I think that is very clear and has been emphasized here tonight is that there are a lot of moving pieces to achieving the goal of creating affordable or attaining housing in the town. There are multiple bodies that can address the issue. We're looking at that. With respect to the CPA funds, that's one of several funding sources that is available for affordable housing purposes. The issue that we're dealing with CPA funds is that CPA funds must be spent solely on housing projects that fit the definition of community housing set forth in the statute. Now, in general, that means that CPA funds can only be expended on housing developments that will serve residents who earn less than 100% of the area-wide median income in the town. For example, that means if CPA funds are being used to help construct housing in Chatham, the eventual occupants of that house must earn less than 100% of the AMI. or if CPA funds are appropriated and being used for down payments or rental assistance programs, the recipient of those funds must earn less than 100% of the AMI as well. Although 100% of median income is the maximum threshold that the legislature has established for CPA housing expenditures, many communities choose to only support developments that serve persons and families earning no more than 80% of the AMI, because housing units made available to such low-income families qualify for inclusion on the community's subsidized housing inventory with DHCD. So if funds are expended between the 80 and 100% AMI range, you will not be able to include them on your subsidized housing inventory for DHCD purposes and for achieving that 10% goal purposes. Mm-hmm. That's one point to keep in mind. Now, the limits on the expenditure of CPA funds are quite simply a matter of the definition set forth in the statute. Section 2 of the CPA statute defines community housing as, quote, low and moderate income housing for individuals and families, including low or moderate income senior housing, end quote. Those terms are then further defined as follows. Low-income housing is housing for those persons and families whose annual income is less than 80% of the AMI as determined by HUD. Moderate income housing is similarly defined, but is reserved for those persons and families whose annual income is less than 100% of the AMI determined by HUD. Finally, low or moderate income senior housing is defined as housing for those persons having reached the age of 60 or over, or who would qualify for low or moderate income housing. So how do we change that? How do we relax those financial limitations? Quite simply, we seek to amend the definitions. And the draft special act that I had prepared for review by the board does exactly that. All it does is quite simply, in 2 sections, is basically says that notwithstanding the definition of moderate income housing set forth in the 15th paragraph of section 2 of chapter 44B, the town of Chatham, upon recommendation of its community preservation committee, may appropriate and expend community preservation funds for purposes of community housing for those persons and families whose annual income is less than blank percent of the area-wide median income. In that blank, we can insert whatever percentage figure we deem as appropriate based upon the housing costs within the community and the earnings of folks who strive to live in the community, who we want to accommodate. So I think that something as simple as that is all that would be necessary in order to enable us to utilize CPC funds for affordable or attainable housing purposes. Now, as Dean correctly noted, changing that limit in Chatham may very well meet some level of resistance statewide for those affordable housing activists who do not want to see the limits increased. DHCD itself may even have issues with it because this is sort of cherry picking the threshold amounts on a community by community basis. However, I do think that Chatham, through your legislative representatives, can make a compelling case, much as Nantucket, Boston, Concord, several other communities have done in order to obtain unique sources of funding for their affordable housing needs, that Chatham needs this relaxation of the AMI limit in order to achieve its goals. So I had submitted a draft special act to that end for the board. Again, it's very simple. It's focused specifically on amending the definitional language within the CPC solely to increase that AMI amount. But we could consolidate that with other legislation we would seek to obtain to create other funds that likewise would require special legislation from the general court. I think the goals and objectives of those special legislative requests are conducive to one another. They serve the same ultimate goals, so they would be received favorably. I don't think one would necessarily decrease the likelihood of getting legislative approval for the whole. Happy to answer any questions.
You're on mute, Shereen.
Thank you, Pat. Peter, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I really don't have a question, Pat. I just want to say that I tend to agree with you. I like the way you put it. You made it simple. One thing I know that we're going to most likely get pushback. I get it. The problem is the problem. We have a new problem we need to address. This is a way to get around it. CPC is one potential way to do it. I don't see us not trying to do this. I don't think it should hold us up, but at the same time, I disagree that we shouldn't try to move ahead, because we're going to need a stream of funding over a period of time. This is not going to be a one-shot deal. We need to be able to fund things as they go along, whether it's a public-private partnership, whether we go with Habitat for Humanity, but there's got to be a funding source for attainable housing and rental units that we can then put towards incentivizing a builder to keep those prices down. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Dean?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I had been inclined to offer a motion to advance this evening, but based on the discussion we just had about the Affordable Housing / Attainable Housing Trust and the vote we took, and the suggestion that both Pat and I have contemplated independently of combining this idea in with that, I think it might make more sense to have a comprehensive piece of legislation in the form of a special act drafted and presented to us for a vote and for the discussion, and that gives an opportunity to the public, people who may feel differently. We already heard a couple comments from former Selectman Selden and from Chairman Messina. Gives them an opportunity to comment, but that would be my inclination unless the board wants to go forward tonight on this, and I would suggest that the blank be filled in with 200% when that's drafted.
I agree with you, Dean. I think it would be better to put something comprehensive together. I have Jeff's hands up and see what he has to say as well. Go ahead.
I agree with both. I agree with that approach. I think it's the smartest approach. I also agree with the 200% being filled into that yellow box. I don't see how we do anything less.
Nope. Agreed.
Yeah.
Any other feedback from Peter or Corey? What's your sense of this piece of legislation?
I agree. I said my piece, and I agree.
Okay, Corey?
I'm fine with the previous comments.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to sort of bundle up a package then and move it forward in a more comprehensive manner. Okay, thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, again, I just want to reiterate that we did have a start of 6:30 with the folks from MassDOT, and I do want to accommodate that time period. So I'm going to move the agenda item C in our regular business meeting aside and move on to item D. We'll come back to agenda item C after our item D and before the public comments, if that's okay with you, both you and Dean, Jeff and Dean. Are you okay with that? Okay, I just want to be respectful of the time notice that we gave to the state on the next agenda item, which basically, just as a matter of background, let's see, members of the board have requested representatives from MassDOT to attend this meeting tonight to answer some questions that were raised by us and by the residents and businesses of the rest on the West Chatham Route 28 construction project. We do have we do have representatives here from the project. We have Michael Broderick, Gerald Bernard, and Thomas Courier. I don't know if there's another rep on or not. My apologies if I don't have you. But I do want to say that we have a list of questions that we you have in your packet that are compiled questions. And we also will be accepting questions from the public with a 3-minute time reign. So I just want to welcome the folks from MassDOT and to see who's going to lead us off. When I'm going to ask the questions that we have in the packet. There's maybe 12 here right now, and then turn it over to the board for more questions if they have them. But I'm just wondering who is the lead from MassDOT that I should pose the questions
Hi, Shereen,
to.
this is Jerry Bernard.
Hi, Jerry. Thank you and welcome.
Camera on for you.
Okay. Hey, Jerry. How are you?
Hi, I'm the district construction engineer for Mass DOT.
Okay.
And you hit a couple of them. My area construction supervisor, Mike Broderick, is with us tonight. The on-site resident engineer, Michael King, is with us tonight.
Okay.
Tom Currier, who was the project manager for Mass DOT, is with us. We're supposed to have a representative from the project design consultant from Howard Stein Hudson. I'm not sure if they're on the line. Tom Currier, you know that?
I'm here.
All right. Do you know if Joe from Howard Stein Hudson is with us?
I see Robbie Burgess is on.
Yeah, Robbie's the representative, Jerry.
Oh, okay, great.
Hey, good evening.
I think we're supposed to have a representative from our general contractor, Lawrence Lynch. Either Chris or Mike, you guys there?
Yeah, Mike Norton's on from Lawrence Lynch.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, so I think I've got your questions. If you want to go down through them, I'll answer what I can, and we will farm it out to the appropriate person that can, if I can. If that works for you guys.
That does, and I appreciate it.
I want to thank you for having us here tonight, by the way.
No, I want to thank for the organization and the team that's on tonight to be able to answer the questions. So presently, just so everybody knows where the project is right now, we've had a schedule of events with specific timetable and work table that coincides with it. Presently, it's winter mode, so it's I guess I would call the project's on hiatus for now. But
winter shutdown, slowdown. We work as weather allows.
Okay.
Obviously, on Cape Cod, you see us working a lot more in the wintertime than other places because we have to kind of make up for the times we don't get in the summers.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, great. Okay, so why don't we just start with the questions and then we'll just make it fluid that way. The first question was, has MassDOT, their engineers or HSH, been on site recently and on a regular basis during construction? If not, why not? If so, how frequently and when were they there last?
Okay, that's an easy one. On every project we have a full-time field staff on every project we have. Michael King, who's on the line here, is our full-time resident engineer, and Mike has inspection staff as well. If you see a contractor working, there will be a Mass DOT engineer on that site. And that's true of any project we have.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, did MassDOT or their engineer reevaluate all driveway entrances with the construction limits to ensure that they could safely accommodate two-way traffic for each property?
Okay, I'm going to turn that question over to Robbie or Tom.
I can answer that. Yes, we did. We evaluated it for both two-way traffic, every curb cut on the project. So that would be primarily for, regular vehicles, not semi-trailers. But yeah, every driveway is designed so that people can enter and exit simultaneously.
Okay, thank you. Question 3 was, what driveway entrances were altered in December 2020?
Michael King, our on-site engineer, can address that one.
Can you hear me?
Michael, yeah, I can now. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, so we altered 4 driveway aprons to this point. The Ocean State job lot at the Route 28 entrance was originally planned to be 30 feet. It's been opened up to 38.5 feet. The post office driveway apron that everybody's concerned about, it seems the original plan was 29 feet with opening there. And currently we're at 36 foot 10 inches. The Larry's PX and Chappahoy Plaza Route 28 entrance was planned to be 50 feet, and that's been opened up to 56 feet. On the Barn Hill side, the entrance there, the planned opening was 30 feet, and that's been opened up to 43.5 feet. And all these adjustments were based on, input from constituents in regards to their concerns.
Okay, thank you. Has Matt Dott or their engineer looked at all roadways and driveway entrances, especially those that were altered in late December 2020, to ensure ample turning movement was provided for the driveways, entrances, and roadways for residential or commercial vehicles hauling a trailer, boat, motorcycle, etc., that may be utilizing one of these businesses in an effort to eliminate or avoid trailer tires from hitting the new granite curbing when accessing or egressing locations through the project's limits.
The simple answer is yes. I mean, I could turn to Tom, I guess, or Robbie if they wanted to expand on that response.
What have you got, Robbie?
Well, yeah, we did match. The design intent was to match the driveway to the use. As Mike mentioned, there are wider driveways for commercial uses, more intensive uses, and narrower driveways for more residential type uses. So they were designed on a case-by-case basis, so they kind of vary throughout the project.
Thank you. Okay, this is a specific concern for the West Chatham Post Office, 1671 Main Street entrance, with vehicles observed to make wide turns in and out and over the demarked small triangular island. What is the size of the entrance and how is it measured? Can it be further enlarged? I think you answered that question, but could you reiterate the measurements of that?
I'll let Michael King jump back in that one.
Like I said, currently it was originally planned at 29 feet. It's been opened up to 36 foot 10 inches. There is a little bit of wiggle room maybe on the west side. I know HSH was evaluating that, whether or not that wants to be entertained. That'll be a direction from the consultant. But right now, basically the throat of that driveway apron is almost at a maximum to where it could possibly be where it joins 28. Understandably, since we have the sidewalks there, we now have the radiuses which are no longer available that people are used to. So it's kind of more of a perception thing than an actual reality.
Right.
Okay. All right. Why did the state use T100 granite transition curbing on the roundabout instead of just keeping the street level with the proposed stamped concrete?
We had talked about this earlier. Tom, do you want to reiterate what we spoke about earlier?
So a T100 curb is used to transition up to the truck apron internal to the circular roadway. So that apron is only for trucks, or primarily for trucks. If we kept it at pavement level and didn't have the T100, cars would just cut across the circle and you'd lose the benefits of the roundabout. So it's to discourage, think of it as a speed bump. It's to discourage regular traffic from using the truck apron. Vehicles that don't need that extra radius, if you will.
Okay. Jill, you have your hand up. Do you have something you want to?
When we had met earlier today on relating to question 5, we talked about the painted triangle called a gore, and I'm not sure that that MassDOT was able to elaborate on that it's not final, and that's under the one of the concerns was the drivers driving over that to make wide turns in and out. So I was wondering if Jerry could speak to that.
Yeah, as Mike had mentioned earlier today when we talked, that's not in its permanent location. It's not meant to be an island. Where that's demarcated on the ground is going to be moved. So if they're hitting it now, they're not going to be hitting an island or anything like that later. It's not going to be curving. Mike, you had said how much you thought that was going to be moved in the final configuration?
Well, Robbie, in fact, I sent it later in the day to you, Jerry, the plan. But initially, the radius on that gore was 7.5 feet. It's been reduced to 2.5, so it's going to give it a little more wiggle room. And since we opened up that the east side of the entrance about 6.5 feet, so that'll be pushed back probably, the equivalent distance based on from where it is now.
Yeah, so just because people are driving over what's a painted area now doesn't mean they're going to be driving over something later. That will be adjusted in the final configuration.
Does that include the double line that goes all the way down past Chapahoy and all that? Will that be a permanent demarcation that people can't cross over that?
Are you referring to the center line?
Center line, yeah. Yes.
So
the
center
will
line,
be a
we're not
double
talking
center
about
line.
the post office entrance anymore then.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought it was similar to the same issue. I'm sorry. I'll ask it later.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Are you all set with question 6 and Tom's response to that, I believe?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, there seems to be areas where the granite curbing looks tight at both roundabouts. Has MassDOT or their engineer looked at all curbing throughout the project to make sure it's installed to plan? If an area or areas were determined to be off, has provisions been made to adjust, revise, or alter the curbing in those areas, especially at the George Ryder Road location?
To my knowledge, and people can back me up, that everything is installed as per plan. Other than the adjustments that Mike King mentioned, which were improvements to driveway openings to make them a little larger, so they could accommodate traffic slightly better. Everything is in compliance with the approved plans.
Okay, thank you. Why is the eastbound rotary entry lane at Barn Hill narrower than the westbound lane and narrower than the entry into the George Ryder roundabout?
I don't believe it is. I think that's kind of a misconception. Who spoke on this when we talked earlier? Was it you, Tom, or was it Mike?
I chimed in because I was looking at the plans at the time, and they're exactly the same on the plans. Didn't we discuss that the splitter island isn't in place yet at Barn Hill?
Yeah, I believe so. I think, Mike, does that sound right?
That's correct. The splitter islands haven't been placed at Barn Hill just to facilitate placing the concrete truck apron in the future. All the travel lanes out there, once delineated with striping, will be 11 foot wide. For the most part, all the curb-to-curb measurements are roughly, 15 feet plus or minus an inch or two based on geometry where you are in the roundabout area.
Yeah, so they are meant to be the same. You're not looking at a final product, basically.
Okay. What does MassDOT intend to do about the blind spot sight distance issue for cars entering the roundabout from the east at the Barn Hill Road roundabout? And the follow-up question is, why is Dunkin' Donuts so close to the road?
That is a tight corner, but there is sufficient sight distance. There's a yield condition when entering roundabouts at no matter what direction. And when entering a roundabout, you only have to look to your left when entering. It's like any T intersection, except it's one-way traffic coming from your left. So there's plenty of sight distance. We didn't want to buy the Dunkin' Donuts. It's not necessary. There is sufficient sight distance, although I grant you it is tight.
Thank you. Okay, why are there so many protruding granite curbing along the project's construction limits?
You've probably heard me say the same thing a couple of times, that we're not done. You're looking at a project in process. So the final paving isn't done. So if you think about it, looking at it, the roadway's coming up. We're going to be adding additional thickness to the paving. The curbing is in its final configuration, so that curbing is still sticking up, yet won't be when we're done. When we do the final paving, there's more mix going into it. So it will transition into it. That's why you'll also notice a certain amount of drums out there in order to keep people from, if they didn't see it, not to hit it. So the drums may cause a narrowing effect maybe at some of the driveways. You pick your poison. We want the visibility with the drums for people to see it, but we also don't want them hitting the curbing and getting flats. So they might complain that you've got a little less width of the driveway because the barrel's in the way, but the barrel's keeping you from hitting a stub end that temporarily is still sticking out of the ground. But your final configuration, none of that will be there.
Okay. Where is the snow going to be put by MassDOT when plows can't get close to the granite curbing?
Tom, go ahead. I mean, I'm not quite sure exactly what they're asking, but I think we have an answer.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we use granite curbing for a purpose, and one of the main purposes is that granite is impervious to plow blades. So the plow drivers typically run their blade right up on, next to the granite and use it to guide them along the edge of the roadway. But we were questioning whether this inquiry referred to the center islands of the roundabouts. But regardless, we can get up. The plows do get right up next to the granite, and they push the snow off the roadway that way.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. We have another question. It's requesting confirmation of the size of the roundabouts and whether they were built to the published plans.
Yes, they were.
Okay, there was no. Okay.
No alterations that we know of that were requested. I mean, Mike, Robbie, you guys can confirm that. We have the contractor online. So everything appears to be built per spec per approved plans.
Okay. All right. I did have a question. I'm concerned from one of the business owners at Chappahoy. I think it was a question that was sent late in the day today. And it was about that medium yellow line that goes, the double center line that goes by Chappahoy Plaza. And there's no opening to make let's say if you're going west, to make a left-hand turn into the plaza. And the person wondered if that's a permanent no turn sort of indication for that.
I had seen that question, and the question almost sounded like they were asking if there was going to be a median in the roadway.
I think that, yes, they were asking that, but I think their concern was that yellow line sort of going to be fixating that nobody could take that turn if they're going west, take a left-hand turn at all.
I mean,
there's nothing illegal about taking a left-hand turn over a double yellow line.
Yeah,
okay.
That's kind of an odd question. That's why we had thought that they were trying to ask us if there was a plan to put a median.
They are.
Okay, and no, not as part of this project.
Okay, all right. Okay, those conclude the questions that we had in writing that we had put together for you. I'm going to turn it to the board now to see if they may have any questions for you. And then we'll take it out to the remote participants, reminding everybody we're talking about some of the issues that they're seeing at this time in the, that we're addressing on the project. So let's just see who. I have Corey first. Go ahead, Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you guys for, signing into this meeting tonight so we can have a conversation. Hopefully the first of a couple, because I think we're going to have to work through a couple concerns. The input we're getting on this, and we all know there's a long history with this project, but the input we're getting is from those who are using this on a regular basis. People who drive through this, go to the businesses there, shop, post office, restaurants. So the users are trying to give some constructive input on concerns, which we have. I am one of those who drive through this corridor on a daily basis. I do share the concerns with the West Chatham post office entrance. I would love to have seen a webcam out there that we could have collected data, of all the stuff that's going on, so we have some hard evidence that we can see how people, travel this area. I see the wide turns. I do have concerns with the design. I understand there's patterns that people have over the years. This is a new design concept for them, but I do share the concerns specifically with the West Chatham area. I do have a couple questions that didn't make the list, and I wanted to follow up. On George Ryder Road, with the abutting property of Ocean State Job Lot, we had a little incident last Friday with a car overshooting or missing the entrance. With the elevations that have been created with this project, is there going to be any need for a guardrail in that area, or if that doesn't make the standards?
I don't believe it makes the standards to install a guardrail there.
Okay, because that entrance during this current construction phase we may want to consider marking that much better so we can avoid incidences like last Friday morning. Okay. Second question is in the George Ryder roundabout. I believe there's going to be some stamped concrete in various locations. I guess question one, is that correct?
For the truck apron around the roundabout, yes.
Okay. It just seems that the plans that I've looked at, it looks like it's going to make the travel lane even narrower. So I don't know if that is feasible to proceed with, or I would just throw that out for consideration to evaluate to see if that is necessary. There has been a lot of concerns about fire department and Chatham Police Department vehicles. I will defer to our fire chief and police chief and let them raise those concerns if they feel, because they are far more qualified than I am. So I would defer to them for any input. But I would hope that we could have a process that these are legitimate concerns based on what we are experiencing on a daily basis, that we want to see a project that is where a lot of us had a vision of. And I know it's still under construction, but I hope we can get a process that the Department of Transportation, the Board of Selectmen, or Select Board, soon to be, and the public can have an open dialogue, that we can do this in a timely and transparent manner, because we're just trying to make the project what we hope for in the long run. So those are my questions at the moment. I just hope that we can have an open dialogue and address these concerns. And if there's any mechanism to reinforce what this public is putting for input, I would be very supportive of. So thank you for your time.
All right, let me just probably help you out just quickly though, Corey. As far as the open dialogue, we do have biweekly project meetings on this project that the town is involved in. It's DOT, the contractor, the designer, and the town also participates in those. So there's always an opportunity for the town to bring to us any questions, any open issues, and there is an open dialogue. And we do this in all of our projects. We find it most helpful. And as far as the stamped concrete truck apron you referred to, that doesn't take away from the travel lanes. That is an addition to the travel lane width. Think of it as an extra width to accommodate large, long vehicles, such as trucks, fire trucks. We're not like stealing from the roadway to put that apron in. That's accounted for in the design. Cars don't need it. Longer vehicles are felt they do. If you looked at every roundabout we've built, they all have that very similar look about them, that they have these aprons in place. If a car goes over it, no harm, no foul, but they don't have to. If they stay in their travel lane, those travel lanes are designed geometrically to handle vehicles. And if it's thought that longer trucks and longer vehicles needed more room, they won't be driving over the roundabout itself. They've got that extra room on the interior. So.
I just want to back up for one comment I made. I guess as far as the West Chatham area, I guess I'll ask directly. can that be reevaluated or assessed to see if there is any needs?
No, not at this time. I mean, this design was done a long time ago. It was fully vetted through the town. We're past the middle of the construction stage. You know what I mean? At this point,
Corey, there's nothing wrong with the design. The design has been evaluated.
Please speak through the chair. Mr. Courier, if you just speak through me, then we know that Mr. Gerald has finished his comment and Corey speaks and then you. So if we could do it that way, it might be a little easier.
I was just trying to answer his question. That's
sure,
all.
Go ahead.
Okay, can I go? And the town was very thorough in their questioning of the design. And so we evaluated it internally at MassDOT. Howard Stein Hudson evaluated it more than once. And then we hired a peer reviewer, the premier roundabout designer in the country, actually, a company called Kittleson. And we asked them to look at it. And all those entities have arrived at this design. This design has been fully vetted. It's actually a very clever, good design. Should be no problem with it.
Okay, I respect.
It's well past the time to reevaluate now. We're almost done building it.
I will respectfully disagree that I'm disappointed in the West Chatham post office curbing has come out, and if it's designed to be used in a certain manner, it's not operating as such based on daily operation.
I thought you were talking about the design of the stamped concrete around
No,
the
no,
roundabout.
I'm talking about the entrance to
Now
West
you're talking
Chatham.
about the post office curbing.
The post office, yes.
So that's a 38-foot wide
3610.
Okay, so a 30-foot driveway opening is standard for a post office or a typical storefront or any two-way entrance. So you're getting quite a bit of extra width there.
And I'm not necessarily the width, it might be the angle, or there could be some cutback to the sidewalk. There's something that just doesn't quite fit when I see cars entering and exiting, even myself. So if I'm an error, so be it. I'll put my blame on me. But my observations concern me, and I think as a citizen, it seems to be a current standard theme with the post office, is that we have concerns over that, and we're bringing it to everyone's attention to see if it can be evaluated and corrections to made. Because we want this project for the long term. So these are just observations and concerns we're sharing. And like I say, I respectfully think that I'm not. It's short of what I'm hoping for at the present. So.
Okay. Any other responses for Corey? All right. Thank you, Corey. Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Shireen, and thank you all for participating in this meeting. We really appreciate it. I just kind of want to echo a couple of points that Corey made. He mentioned the incident at Ocean State last week, and I just wondered if, at least during the construction period, as we proceed through the winter, before that is the project is completed, maybe you might think about putting an additional barrier of barrels or whatever there to make clear that that's not the way to enter Ocean State. I think part of the issue, whether it's that or the post office, is that for years people have been used to entering these properties in different ways, and now they're faced with something quite different. And also, most people, I think, realize they have to slow down now, and they're forced to slow down because of the roundabouts, which was one of the goals. The other has to do with the post office entry. In the earlier questions that Shireen was posing, I think it was said that that's almost to the max. And I wanted to just sort of suggest or ask whether it could be extended to the max. I don't know what the max is, and I agree with Corey. I wondered if there's anything that could be done to reduce the sharpness of the curb angles at this point. So those are my suggestions or questions.
All right. It actually might help if I just back up quick. And I'll admit right off the bat, there is a learning curve with a roundabout. It's not what any of us grew up with necessarily, other than some big rotaries. Coming into a T intersection, a four-way intersection, signalized, partially signalized. Coming into a roundabout is a different way of viewing it, is a different way of driving it. Until people get used to that, and we had talked about earlier, we get pushback. We get input from people during design, during construction. And we kind of give everybody that same answer of wait, wait, wait. Let's get in the final configuration. Let's make sure the proper striping is in, the signage. In almost to a T, with very, very little exception, it stops. We don't hear anything. They work fantastic. They're safe. They tend to damper traffic speeds. That's their intent when people come into them. Tom had mentioned before, you come in, you only have to look to your left when you're coming into a roundabout. You yield to the people on the roundabout. You're forced to slow down. Normally, if that was a signalized or a flashing signal, a four-way stop, we all know what people do when there's a yellow light. They want to go like heck to get through that intersection, you know, and then the light changes, accidents happen. That doesn't happen with roundabouts. People have to naturally dampen their speed coming up to the roundabout. They are much safer. It's a more efficient flow of traffic. So with that, I'm just saying that you still got to give it a chance to work in its meant configuration. As far as ongoing concerns, and I can hear, you know, what you're saying about the post office, and I had mentioned it to Jill earlier. When this is all said and done tonight, by all means, if through the town you want to send us in writing things that you need us to revisit, relook at, or confirm, by all means, please do. I'm not going to promise you anything's going to change, but if it's something we need to revisit and look at, we will definitely do that. We'll give it due diligence and we'll respond accordingly back to the town. This doesn't have to be the end all be all, you know, this evening. We're going to do our best to answer all of your concerns tonight, but if there's something that we can't answer, or if maybe it's not to your satisfaction, by all means, you know, put it in paper, send it over to us. You know, and if it's something that we can revisit or think we should, we'll look at it. So, you know, don't think we have to solve all the world's problems all at once tonight by any means.
Okay, Dean?
I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions from the board before we turn it over to the general public? Okay, I do want to remind everybody that we did have 12 questions in relationship to some of the issues here. And ask that you raise your hand or call out your name and I'll make a roster of who's to speak. We're asking that you limit your time to 3 minutes. I just heard somebody yell out. Who was that?
It was Judy.
Judy?
Yep.
Judy, okay, I have you on the list, Judy.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. Give me a second just to jot down everybody so I don't lose you in the queue. Okay. All right, we're going to start with Stephen Buckley. Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. You know, I went to most of the planning sessions over the years, and I said, someday we'll learn to use video conferencing and we can pull up maps and look at them. Can we pull up a map so we can, I have a question, and it would really help if we could pull up the last 100% design or whatever the last one was.
Jill, do we have that available, or Tom, do we have that available?
I'm having trouble sharing my screen tonight, so I'm not sure that I can try to grab it. I know Tom's on the call too. And we'll see what we can do. But Mr. Buckley, why don't you go ahead and ask your question? Yeah. We'll see if we can answer it.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay. Or you could share my screen. I got, it has to do with the painted islands that are just east of the Barn Hill roundabout. And I thought I heard somebody say that they're not going to be painted. They're going to actually be raised islands, because that's what I thought the plan said. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got lead islands coming in that actually serves to put people into the right motion to the right. They're a critical part of the design.
Okay, but right now they're painted, but they're going to be raised. I mean, genuine with curbed, right?
Yeah,
That's what I
don't
wanted.
know if they're just pure. Mike, do you know is it vertical? Is it slope? You know what's
Yes,
going in
it's
there?
a vertical curb.
They're going to be
It's a
vertical
good
granite
deal.
curb, Stephen. Just
Okay,
like we've always said.
Okay, just like because yeah, just wanted to confirm. Yeah, that. And the other part was I thought I heard somebody say that the entrance to Larry's off of Main Street had been expanded from 50 to 56 feet.
Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay, according to some constituents, wanted it to be wider. Would that be truck delivery people or something? Who asked for, because the whole theme through all of this planning was safety, safety, safety. Oh, it's complete streets. We want to make this safe for people to walk. And that part right there, that wide entrance, right, that goes from the Shop Ahoy, I think everybody knows what I mean. That's the most, that always struck me as the most dangerous place to walk because people come flying into that, or some, not everybody, but I've seen people come flying into that parking lot because it's
There
so
was
easy.
no sidewalk there before, Stephen. So you're right. It was very dangerous. Now we have a sidewalk.
Now there's a sidewalk, but there's a curb cut, right? I mean, is it still just at grade pavement or is there?
No, it ramps up approximately 3 inches.
Oh, okay. Well, that's yeah, kind of, okay, 3 inches. What I was hoping, and we could maybe this would be an issue later, to put something there that would be more of a, I don't know what the term might be, but cobblestones or something that would look more like a sidewalk and also give people who are entering, whether they're more pause, like, oh, what is this that I'm going over here? I'm going to slow down. I'm not going to go flying into this 56 wide entrance. So that's my concern, is that there might be some traffic calming aspect to that part there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Whoever has this screen up, would you unshare it, please? We can move on to the meeting.
I think Stephen put that screen up.
Stephen, can you unshare your map, please?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Messina.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I haven't participated in the years of meetings with the state on this. Live in South Chatham. You know where South Chatham is. It's on the other end of Chatham. And I live on off Cockle Cove. And it generally takes me about maybe a good 4 or 5 minutes sometime to go from Cockle Cove onto 28 as the cars come barreling down South Chatham at 45, 50 miles an hour. And I love to follow, now that the roundabouts are almost there, to follow them into West Chatham and see how they go from 50 miles an hour down to 40 to 30 and then 15 to 20 to enter the roundabout. So the primary objective is to make it safer and slow down. You guys get an attaboy and an A+ because people are slowing down. And I know it will get better. In terms of the granite curbing, kind of give you a B-. There's still a lot more to go, and it's probably, as you say, a learning curve and perception. My concern at this point is the landscaping and the lighting. We need lighting there ASAP because people are coming in and are not familiar with it. And God bless you have those red and orange cones at night so you can see the reflection and know to slow down. So hopefully the lighting will be a priority in the spring when you guys start working again. Obviously, black asphalt, it looks terrible, but I guess somebody was trying to save a few bucks. I just came back from Orleans downtown and saw the brick pavers, and I would have hoped that we had done a little bit better on that, but I realize it's dollars and cents. Again, generally appreciative of what's been done so far. I think you're meeting your objective, and I want to congratulate the Board of Selectmen for hanging in there with a lot of the noise to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Our next commenter questioner is Tony Zombas. Mr. Zombas.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Madam Chair, and
Yes.
DOT guests. My name is Tony Zombas, property owner of Chapahoy Plaza. And my concern was always that I was under the understanding that there would be a divider between on the west side of Barn Hill Road, like a second divider, that you couldn't take a left if you were coming from the village or the west. But I think somebody said that you could. Maybe they changed it. I'm not sure. But I just want to confirm that it was changed and you can make a left turn behind by Larry's PX coming from the left, coming from the west.
Mike, Robbie?
That was the very question I think I had asked earlier.
I just want
Mr. Zombas.
to confirm that, Charlene.
Okay. Is there somebody who will confirm that or speak to that?
Mike or Robbie, can you guys confirm that, please?
Yes,
I'm
somebody
here.
repeat the question. I'm sorry. I didn't quite catch the question.
Robbie, I think what they're alluding to is the double yellow center line on the going past the entrance of the Chapahoy Plaza on Route 28. There seems to be some perception that you can't take a left-hand turn over a double yellow center line. That's perfectly legal, if that's the question.
Correct. It's just a double yellow center line with in pavement reflectors along that stretch.
I'm not talking about a yellow line. I'm talking about a divider.
There is no median proposed at that location.
Say that again.
There is no median proposed at that location, raised or painted or otherwise. There is no median.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Zamba. Our next speaker questioner is Ann. I don't have a last name, so Ann.
Hi, Ann Dixon here. Thank you. I live in West Chatham off of George Ryder North, and I like the Rotary. Making a left turn was impossible. I had the option of going on Queen Anne to get to the village, but I've been around it many, many, many times. I do like it. My question is it me or are the curbs really high?
I'll take that one back. I had mentioned earlier, you may not have been.
I probably not.
It's all right. Basically setting the table that this is still a work in progress, obviously. So what you're seeing isn't done. There is still paving to happen out there. Okay. So as the paving comes up, the reveal and height of the curbs that you're seeing will obviously be less. Perfect. So yes, they do look high right now.
Thank you.
Yes, the ends do stick up a little. Once we're done paving, that won't be the case.
That's wonderful, wonderful.
Okay.
I would have liked to have seen cobblestones like Route 39 Harwich, but we will get used to the asphalt. I hope there's going to be pretty little landscaping in the middle. One more question. A lot of times I personally will come out of George Ryder North, I get right on the Rotary, and I want to make a left onto George Ryder South. I'm wondering if that's really going to get jammed up from people coming from South Chatham, from people who will be on the Rotary like me, trying to make a left maybe. I don't know. How's that going to work? Can you help me with that?
What I can tell you is that traffic normally flows freer and better through a roundabout than an intersection. If you would picture this as an intersection, whether it was four-way or whatever, you have stopping motions that vary. You green, yellow, red, green, yellow, red.
Right.
So people are stopped for a certain amount of time. Traffic backs up, then it clears the other stage ways. That doesn't happen with a roundabout. It is a constant flow of traffic all the time. So you don't normally see backups of consequence at a roundabout.
Okay.
At peak times, I'm sure it's going to slow down.
Yes.
But that's the whole idea behind the design, is that it's a constant flow. If they work right, and once people get used to them, you'll see that it works a little better as time goes along.
Right. I just hope that people will not block up George Ryder entering the Rotary, George Ryder South, as somebody wants to make a left into George Ryder South coming through the Rotary. Because now you'll have people behind the person wanting to make a left, people blocking it. You know how people block driveways, you know, that sort of thing. But anyway, I'm happy with it. And I can't wait till the curbs are lower and I can zip right on through it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Next questioner is Elaine.
Yes, thank you. A number of these questions have been mine. I just would like to ask one question first. We keep saying these are approved plans. When you say approved plans, who ultimately approved the plans? Was it the town or Mass DOT? When you say
Both actually. I mean, Mass DOT, Howard Stein Hudson is the designer of record. It is reviewed and approved through Mass DOT, and the town is brought in during the design process. Trying to think if Tom Currier could probably speak on the process a little bit more.
No, that's all right. No, I only have 3 minutes here, so.
Yeah, the town is brought into the design process on jobs like these.
Okay, because I was heavily involved during the HSH phase, and I was wondering if HSH, this is their vision. You also mentioned that it's a learning curve and 70%. The problem with us is 70% of our traffic in the summer is from out of state, so there's not going to be any opportunity for them to learn. They're going to be shocked. I want to mention the Barnhill lanes. That was my question. They are different sizes. The westbound lane is 22 feet wide, and that's from the T100 to the curb. And going eastbound, much narrower, it's only 18 feet, and that's not including, you know, obviously the yellow lines that are bringing it in. That is used for a lot of boats that are going to have to make that whole thing. I understand the whole idea of the stamped concrete and the mountable, but I've been seeing a lot of cars already going over that. They're not trailers, they're big. So that's just a comment to keep in mind. The one I'm really concerned about that hasn't been addressed, and I don't know if you can call it up, is page 16 of the design, which is the George Ryder roundabout. There was an accident going westbound where an individual car apparently ended up on top of the area where that lamppost is going to be. The understanding is 4 tires were blown. It wasn't investigated because there was a medical emergency, but we don't know which caused which. If the blowing of the tires and hitting the curbs caused a medical emergency. It's very, very narrow there. And when you look at the designs for that roundabout, you have plans to further intrude on that entry into the roundabout with stamped concrete all the way from George Ryder Road South into the roundabout, and also a huge stamped concrete area as you're coming south from it's coming south from George Ryder and taking a right onto Main Street. It is going to further congest that area, and I would really like you guys to look at that and consider why you would do it. I mean, you're not adding space for trucks, you're taking away space from cars. It's already super, super narrow. And I think for plowing, I mean, this isn't the, the mountable stuff in the center where, you plow it once in a while. This is the roadway. And I can't imagine why you'd want to have that in a roadway. So that's that.
I actually did speak to this earlier. And Robbie, please, by all means, jump in if I misspeak. That truck apron isn't taking away from the roadway. It's in addition to. The travel lanes around the roundabout are designed as standard travel lanes. That area that you're seeing for the truck apron is taken out of the island itself.
No, you're misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding. I'm not talking about the island. I wish I could show it to you. You're going to have to look at it. These are additions. These are currently not there. These are the corners that are currently the existing roadway we are using. And you're going to add on top of that. And Tom Temple said that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to overlay the concrete onto the current pavement that we're driving on now, which is already narrow. So hopefully you can fix that and not do it, because I think it's going to make it worse for people. In terms of the post office parking lot, Tom Temple had told us that on December 23rd, you made it 55 feet. And obviously we all went out and said it's not 55 feet. And we had like a half a dozen people went out and measured and got the same thing you did, under 37. I would hope you guys would understand when we make these comments that we've been using this now. And I understand it's still a construction area, but you can just sit on the picnic table in the surveys and see some pretty horrific potential situations. when these big trucks, that is our main thoroughfare for deliveries for the entire town. And some of these are really massive. Then you have the mail trucks going in. When they have to make that right turn, they swing out to the left and they're almost in oncoming traffic. And if there are cars, particularly in the summer, if there are cars trying to get out of the post office and a truck is trying to get in, they are going to have to either back up or the truck is going to have to wait for them to exit. Meanwhile, you're going to have traffic mounting up and backing into the roundabout. So that's that concern. And I know you can't answer all of these now, but can you see those? Can you see those stamped concrete areas?
Oh, yeah, I see the bump you're talking about.
Yeah, those stamped concrete at each corner are not there now, but they're going to be added. And that's going to make it even tighter for average cars because cars know they're not supposed to drive over them. So I don't think you need them, but that's your call because you're the engineers. That job lot accident, I would ask you, that was up on this map. If you can see where that entrance is, they still haven't put a barrel on the north corner of the parking lot. So people don't, they added some barrels, but not at the north corner. Cars are going to drive over there. My son happened to be there and he saw this poor lady. That was a heck of a drop. And it looked from her perspective that was all the parking lot because it was paved on the main road. So I would also say, somebody mentioned that there's not going to be a guardrail there. That's like a 5-foot drop. There has to be a guardrail there because cars could go off there and land on top of cars in the parking lot. And
Elaine, do you have any specific questions that haven't been asked? Because I want to move on to, we have several other speakers.
Well, these were my questions. And, you know, what are we supposed to do this? I've spent a lot of time on this. I'm pointing these things out. You don't have to answer them now. They're not questions. They're statements from users. And the only other thing is emergency vehicles. You have in many areas, again, with summer traffic, there are the concrete center islands with the barrier pavers, and then the barrier granite pavers on the right. And if vehicles are coming through there and cars are in those areas, there is no place for them to go except up onto the curbs in order to let emergency vehicles through. This particular design is very tight for this area with all that granite. I'm telling you, it's like an obstacle course. If you spend some time watching people trying to negotiate it, I understand it may get better once it's completed. But I would hope you would take into consideration the questions we have now and the concerns now, because I know that by the time this is finished, it's too late and you're not coming back for 30 years. So those are my, and one other, the Dunkin' Donuts, you said that the sight line, you only have to look to the left when you're coming out of Barn Hill. That's the way roundabouts work. That's the exact problem. Because from flying out of there, they look to the left, they think they're safe. And the problem is people have already entered the roundabout on the right. And I have seen probably 4 or 5 near misses with someone coming out of Barn Hill and not looking to the right and not seeing oncoming traffic. So I guess that's it for now because I'm over 3 minutes.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next person. Paula Lofgren.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
I can hear you well. Thank you.
Oh, cool. I appreciate the rotary, the roundabout at George Ryder, although I still am nervous as I watch people fly into there, wondering if they're going to yield. So I'm excruciatingly slow going through there. I have a question, if I could. The roundabout at the end of George Ryder sits within the airport's runway protection zone, which is an area the FAA reserves for protection of the citizens on the ground in the event of an aircraft emergency or mishap. And I'm not sure if these signs are already in your plans, but since this is a portion of the roadway, an area that should be free of people, I'd like to request that signs be placed there to notify the public that they are entering the runway protection zone for the airport. And also, if not in the plans, I'd like to request that signs be placed on both sides of Route 28, alerting the public for low-flying aircraft as they enter that stretch of the roadway, especially when the big Pilatus comes. It can be a bit disconcerting to see that big turboprop coming in. So those are my 2 requests. I don't know if they're already in the plans, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Any answer to that question, or that's just not
Well,
something that's
I think
part
I
of?
had mentioned earlier that any requests like this are going to have to be channeled through the town to Mass DOT. If the town supports it and really wants it, by all means, send it to us. I'm not going to tell you we're going to do it, but I'll tell you we'll look at it and see if it's something we can entertain.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Rick Levitt?
Okay,
Yes.
am I on?
Yes, you are.
Well, thank you, Shireen, and I want to, I have a comment and a question, but first I want to welcome Jerry and Tom and team MassDOT and personally thank them for the great job that they're doing here.
Thank you.
My comment is when we planned West Chatham Village Main Street back in 2016, Selectmen asked Chatham's Planning Board and Historic Business District Commission to jointly hold a public hearing and report on the people's choice for street lighting, sidewalk materials, and landscaping, especially trees, to replace over 20 mature trees removed during construction. West Chatham 28 is in Chatham's Historic Business District. The joint report, well before completion of the 100% design stage, for some reason, our requested upgrades, all compatible with MassDOT's design guide for historic centers, not make it into the final design. Yet the upgrades are the same as those recently made by MassDOT on Route 28 in Orleans Village Center. As you heard earlier tonight, Chatham is considering building, well, affordable, attainable housing in West Chatham Village. And the planning board is at work as we speak, revising outdated zoning bylaws to conform with the comprehensive village center. My question is this, and it's for everyone. Although it is clear that now too late for MassDOT to make roadway changes, will MassDOT commit now to allow Chatham to make the requested upgrades in the future, paid for by Chatham or like Orleans with grants from other sources? Thank you.
All right. Obviously, I can't answer that tonight by any means, but requests like that, you absolutely need to put to us in writing from the town of Chatham. If it's something that the town is obviously going to help fund, those need to be assurances, because obviously anything we do, you got to know where the money's coming from. On every project we do, whether it's federal, state, if there's local funding sources. But those things happen on jobs. But by all means, I encourage you to send, a detailed request into Mass DOT through the town. It's the only way.
Great, thank you, Jerry, very much.
Yeah, it's the only way you're ever going to get that process started.
I understand. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions from the remote participants? I think we've gone through our roster.
Shireen, Judy.
Oh, Judy, I'm so sorry. I missed you. I'm so sorry. You're on my
Okay,
list.
no
Go ahead.
problem. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to echo Selectman Metter's comments about the West Chatham Post Office. You said earlier in your, when you were responding to him, that there is wiggle room there. I use that area. I go back and forth multiple times a day and go in and out of that post office probably twice, if not 3 times a day for business. It's too narrow. And if there's wiggle room, why wait until the project is finished? Why not try to work on it now? It's just too tight, as Corey said, going in and out of there. And when you have trucks making deliveries to the mail, the post office trucks, along with the big trucks that deliver food to Cream and Cone, it's a nightmare. And I really would like for you to, instead of, just kind of dismissing all of us, which is how I feel what has happened tonight, it would be great if you would at least take a look at it. I mean, several people have mentioned it, and the people that mentioned it, myself and Corey, as we say, use it multiple times a day. And the only other comment I have is when we have rainstorms, there is a huge, huge puddle at Job Lot. And other people have noticed this, and I'd like to know what you're going to do about that. We can't have this all winter.
All right, that's the first we've heard about puddles at Job Lot, I believe. Mike King, do you know anything about that?
No, sir. No one's brought it to my attention, and I haven't seen any significant issues.
All right.
Check it out during a rainstorm. It was pretty significant when we had our last rain. But the post office, I would really appreciate it, and with what others have said on here tonight, it would be wonderful if you could address it. It's just not working.
All right.
Okay.
We'll take a look. We'll take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you letting me speak.
Thank you, Judy. Tom Temple, our Director of Public Works, DPW has his hand up. Tom, did you want to comment?
Yeah, Shereen, thank you. I appreciate it, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let Mike King know and Jerry that I will go out during the next rainstorm and take some photos of the area in question that was just discussed. And that way there I could forward them to everybody to make sure that it's on your radar.
All right, that sounds good. As far as the post office, I mean, I'm hearing this. Believe me, we're not here to give you lip service. We're not here to ignore anybody. There are limits to what can be done, obviously, on any project. What I can tell you is that we will have our project designer, Howard Stein Hudson, our contractor, and our staff go out there and take a look at it to see if there is any enhancement within reason, that can be done. Obviously, we can't take someone else's property. There's got to be ample space. We can't sacrifice one thing to improve something else. But I can promise you we will look at it.
And could we get results of that just sent to the town manager so we can get that out to the public at some point?
Yeah, if we set up a field meeting out there, we'll definitely be inviting Tom to it anyway.
Right, of course.
They will know, and it will be discussed at our bi-weekly meeting. So.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Tom, what I would suggest is even if it's just an email to me requesting the specifics that we would like the department to revisit the entrance to the post office. That's just kind of the starting point. It gets us all moving in a reason to move and look at it.
I'll put it in an email tomorrow and CC Madam Chair as well and the town manager. Okay.
And weather permitting, we'll get the parties that be out there to take a look at it and see if there's something. I mean, obviously they're not going to be major overhauls, but if there's something that we can do to help ease the concerns or ease the pain of coming in like that, we're not totally opposed to things.
Yeah, and if we could, I'd also like to address, as Elaine indicated, if we could get a couple barrels up on that area where the car went into that area throughout this rest of this winter season until we get the roadway completed and everything else, line painted and everything else completed.
Absolutely. Mike King, Mike Norton, you guys catch that?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Tom, do you want to unshare your screen now? That might be helpful. I think that was you that brought it up. So we don't have any other commenters or questioners from the remote public right now. I see, well, nope. I had one up, one down. So I just want to turn it back to the board to see if there's any final thoughts from any of the board members. Corey, go ahead.
No, I thank you for taking the time to have this discussion. If we need to in the future, I invite you to come back and continue these discussions. Just a procedural question, though. I appreciate you following Tom Temple's email to you, looking into the West Chatham Post Office area. But I know several other items were suggested throughout the meeting tonight. Would it benefit the board to do a follow-up agenda to decide if there's anything formally we want to put in writing to send over to the Department of Transportation, whether it be the stamped concrete or the landscaping or lighting or any elements that were mentioned tonight, to close that conversation up?
Yeah, if you've got a laundry list like that, Corey, like absolutely, give us a bulleted list, and like you, if nothing else, at least you get your answers back that'd be like yes, no, maybe, or something like that. But we can put things to bed, or we can decide if something needs further address.
Several items were mentioned tonight. I just want to make sure we follow through on those at whatever level we can. So.
Okay.
Corey, is it necessary to do this as an agenda item, or can this be a housekeeping matter?
It'd be a housekeeping matter. Whatever
Okay.
procedure we need to do to kind of button up those questions, I'd be content with.
Okay. All right, we can do it that way. Tom, your hand's up. Temple?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you'd like, I can put together the questions that came up tonight. I wrote most of those down. Hopefully I got everything. And then what I'll do is I'll send a draft over for you and all the selectmen to take a look at it. If there's anything I missed, we can add it to it, and that way we can send out one letter.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, and obviously the best conduit to us for information back and forth is through Tom.
Right, of course.
He knows the staff. He knows all the players.
I appreciate that. Peter Kokolas. So,
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be really quick. No, thank you, all of you, for the information and also your forbearance with a lot of the questions. I think that's it was very well done, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to continue doing something. Just want to make one other comment. We talked about, there were a couple comments on lighting and landscaping and so forth. There was a meeting up with you guys, maybe a year ago, talked about
State
lighting.
House?
Yes, you got it. I was
at that meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And basically there was some discussion about the trees and the lighting and whatever. I just remember, Tom is familiar with that. I just wanted to make that point too. So thank you.
okay. So thank you very much. I think this was a really productive meeting. I appreciate your time you spent tonight. Zoom meetings aren't always the easiest, but I think it went well. We got a lot of questions answered that have been out there, outstanding, and we look forward to continued communication, and definitely going to look forward to the project being finished and finalized, and getting West Chatham back on its back to a sort of a normal sort of phase. Is there anything else we need to address from the board? I don't think so. So again, thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for the rest of the team that was on the call. We really appreciate it. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Yes, you too. Definitely. All right, so we did pause our regular business meeting, board discussion agenda items. And so we're going to go back to our affordable attainable house initiatives and funding sources. Item C, which was funding, and we have two items to discuss tonight. One is to consider board request to Community Preservation Committee, and that's from Dean. And we've had a couple conversations in our board goals and objectives, and Dean brought this up in conversations, and we have it as an agenda item. So I'm going to just turn it over to Dean and see where you want to land on this. Go ahead, Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand there's been a staff initiative to request, I guess, $500,000 or $600,000. And Katie presented to the CPC last week. I don't know. I didn't see that meeting, so I assume that took place. But that was done, at the staff level. As you can see from the memo from Alex, dated January 8th, there is a fund balance of $1.9 million. And we do estimate new revenue at $1.1 million for FY22. I had an initial question for Alex, which is basically, what is the maximum amount that we could tap CPC for affordable housing? I'm talking affordable housing as it's currently defined. After the 2022, FY 2022 amounts are subtracted, because you indicate that there were projects that were postponed from the town meeting that we're going to tap into that. And after the 10% allocations are made for historic preservation and open space, what's the maximum that we could? I'm not saying I'm going to propose that, but I'd like to know what it would be.
Madam Chair, thank you. Through you to Selectman Castro. I'd have to look to see, we have received an additional application, a couple of additional CPC applications since I wrote the memo, and the applications are due this Friday. However, You could draw down the entire amount. I would not recommend it because that leaves you no fund balance to begin next year with. But if I do a quick calculation, if we have almost $3 million of available funds and we're using 1.2, that would give you the balance that could be appropriated. And again, you can appropriate any balance as long as you appropriate the 10% to each of the three categories. The remaining funds can go to any purpose.
So you could technically pull out as much as $2 million, $2.8 million, or $2.7 million. Is that right?
I'm looking at about $2.4 million that could be appropriated. Again, I don't think I would recommend that.
I'm proposing it. I'm just trying to point out. We've had these. No, I'm just trying to point out that identify the amount that could be at a max taken out. Thank you. You've answered that. You've answered my question. We know that there are various applications going forward to the CPC, and some of us have been concerned over the years with the esoteric nature of some of the projects. And I suspect this may be the first year when I vote no on some projects that come before us. And I understand it's town meetings. Only the CPC can recommend to town meeting. It's really out of the selectmen's hands. But I'm going to evaluate projects very carefully, considering the various alternative proposals that are in front of us. So given Madam Chair, thank you, Alex, given the extremely important issue of affordable housing that we've been talking about over and over again, and I think we should seek more than $600,000. And I think former Selectman Selvin makes a very good point. It's an easier request if you have a particular project or perhaps an acquisition in mind, and you can go to the committee and ask for it, as opposed to just transferring the money over to the Affordable Housing Trust. But I don't think we have transferred enough over to the Affordable Housing Trust. And in fairness to the CPC, they have been more than generous the last couple of years. It was $400,000, I think, last year, and maybe something similar or slightly less than that the prior year. I just think we should move it up. I don't know whether we should request $1 million or $800,000, and I don't know how it's going to work impact-wise when you have a staff request, whether the board's request would supersede the staff request or be complementary to the staff request in terms of what the bottom line is. But I just wanted to throw this out for discussion because I am not someone who favors earmarking revenues like short-term rental taxes, and we're going to have a discussion. Jeff's going to bring his idea up next, and we may have some differing opinions on that. I don't like new taxes, but the CPA is a tax. It's a surtax on everything in this town. It collects almost $1 million. I know we get a match, and there is a fund that we could tap more into for affordable housing. So I want to propose to my colleagues on the board that we considered requesting additional funding beyond the $600,000 that's already been requested.
Thanks, Jean.
Thank
Alex has her hand up, so we'll see what Alex has to say here. Alex?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, the request for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund this year is $500,000, so I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
the additional $100,000 is the 10% piece?
That includes the 10%. So again, what we usually do is we appropriate each of the 10% into the reserves and then take the first, usually the Affordable Housing Trust, the amount that we're going to transfer in from that 10%. So the 500, there's 500,000 that's been requested.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Jeff, I think if you want to hold on, Jeff, Jill has her hand up, so it might be, and Katie does, a little clarification. Go ahead.
Yes, I think for the staff request, it could be a combined request. I don't think there needs to be any competing requests. So if the board directs us to increase the request, we can certainly do that.
Thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to clarify. So we did put the initial application in for $500,000 to be transferred to the Affordable Housing Trust. We also put in an application for $30,000 to continue the housing coordinator position from Community Development Partnership. And we also requested $50,000 to do a feasibility study or for a potential feasibility study for potentially town-owned properties or land that may be looked at to be purchased for the types of affordable housing that we would look to utilize. So I just wanted to make that clarification that we work to $600,000 in our requests. And if it's doable, I would suggest that perhaps we could just amend our existing application and get back before the board if Alex thinks that's appropriate.
Shireen?
Yes.
Just to add, in light of what Alex and Katie and Jill just said, I think what I'm looking to have the board propose is to increase the request for the amount going to the Affordable Housing Trust. In addition to what Katie has already presented, we could increase that to some higher number. That's all.
Okay. All right. Jeff?
Yeah, I echo Selectman Nicastro's propensity to ask more out of the CPC for affordable housing. I think it's perhaps more appropriate than other projects that have been funded in the past. So I would favor an increase in the ask. We've asked for 500. I'd favor an increase, and I'm making this up, and I'm putting it out there to 750, round number. Knowing that we have other plans in our minds about what we'd like to do with affordable housing going forward in the very near term. So I think that we need to start funding this trust aggressively, and I would be willing to make the ask. I would vote for an increase in the ask. I agree with Dean. Now, whether it's 750 or 800, right now, that total is $1.4 million already asked of the CPC without another 250,000. So the ask then for the CPC would be pushing, 1650. Or anyway, so.
So you're saying 800,000 on top of the 6?
No, I'm saying they asked for 5. I would bump that ask up to 750.
Okay. All right. That sounds pretty conservative.
The staff has already asked for 5, is my understanding.
Got it.
Sure.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Jeff. Katie, your hand's still up. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I apologize, Madam Chair. I'll take it down.
No worries. Don't worry. Corey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I was just going to, I'm in full agreement of bumping that number up. I mean, 758, 9, it's a kind of an arbitrary number, but we know the need is there. So as much of an appetite as we can get to come up with a number, increasing it above 500, I would be completely supportive of.
Thank you, Corey. I mean, we're looking at potential funding for projects down the road, obviously, at this point, but we have been working on things, and I hope that we'll be able to look at our trust and be able to move some affordable housing forward very soon. This has been a long time coming, and we prioritized in our goals and objectives to look at affordable and attainable housing in a pretty aggressive way along the way. We're getting there. I mean, we're getting there, and I don't know. I know that Florence had said, maybe be specific to a project. Well, I think we need. I think we're ready to, be specific to projects going down the road very quickly. Yeah. And I think that the 750 is not enough of an ask. I think that if we increase that to 800,000 or 900,000, I think it would be a viable endeavor for us going forward. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, 750 again was a fairly arbitrary number. We're going to have a discussion in a second, I hope as well, that will meet with some acceptance. But I'd go to 800 as well. Certainly would. Right. And the projects are coming.
Anybody want a further discussion or a motion? Anybody want to make a motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen request that the staff amend their request for 2 CPC for an additional $200,000 to go to the Affordable Housing Trust. So that would be a total of $800,000 to the Affordable Housing Trust, if I understand.
Yeah, no.
Is that correct, Alex or Katie?
It would actually be an additional $300,000 because the Affordable Housing Trust is only getting $500,000. The other remaining balances were going for the feasibility and the housing coordinators. So this would be.
I'll modify the motion to be a request for an additional $300,000, and that would leave a balance in the fund if all these projects, these other projects, and anticipated projects come in and are recommended. That would leave a balance in the fund of how much, Alex, approximately? Jeff said about 1.4. Would it be 1.2?
I'd have to, let me just quickly do a calculation here, and I think it would leave a balance that's additional $300,000, and we're estimating 3 million, so.
3.2.
Yeah, 800,000. I think, or more.
What do we traditionally? What have we traditionally, if I may, Madam Chair? What have we traditionally left in that fund each year?
It depends year after year. It's different. It depends on how many projects come in. Normally, we've only funded Affordable Housing Trust Fund at about 100,000 or 150,000. So we did bump it up in the past 2 years, and this is another increase, which is great to get the Affordable Housing Trust Fund funded at a level that allows the town to move forward. Again, it depends on how many articles come in. This year, we do have quite a few left over from last year. So, and we, as I said,
what are last year's total? What is the total of the leftover articles, roughly?
Roughly, I'm trying to recall off the top of my head. We had about we funded 1.3 last year, of which 500,000 was for affordable housing, and then we funded 206,000 for the library. But I don't know off the top of my head. I think the recreation, we have almost 400,000 recreation projects this year, 75,000 in open space, and another 250,000 in historic, of which I believe about 80,000 is for new projects.
Well, I haven't completed the motion, but Shireen, I know you were proposing going up to 8 or 9. Maybe we should request only an additional 200 rather than 300. I don't want to leave the CPC fund in a weakened state, but I mean, I can be persuaded either way. So before I put the motion forward, maybe we could have a little discussion on that number.
Sure.
I mean, what are people comfortable with? I don't know.
Okay, because I mean, if we don't, yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
I would recommend the additional $300,000 request. The CPC, if they want to reduce it or recommend a lower amount, that would be an option. But I think that 300,000 is a good number moving forward.
Good. Okay. And my motion is that the town's request, the staff's request, be increased by 300,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay.
That would be the request coming in from the town, the town governance.
Second.
And we had a second from Jeff. Okay. Yep. Any further discussion on this? We'll just move to vote. Okay, we'll take a vote on this. Dean?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, so I look forward to hearing what CPC is going to, what their comments will be on this and moving forward. I hope that they feel good about it as we will. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so our next is consider local funding options. Jeff had put together proposed a concept of a transfer tax and has put together a matrix of information, but I'm just going to turn it right over to him for his presentation. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Shireen, and thanks for your patience. What we're going to discuss this evening is another unique funding source for affordable and attainable housing. So it's very appropriate that we had all our predecessor comments this evening, and we kind of know what we want to do going forward. And this mechanism, this transfer tax, if you will be a mechanism to have funding ongoing into this affordable and attainable trust fund for now and forever. And I didn't make this up. This is a mechanism that is out there in other municipalities, most notably Nantucket, and I modeled this proposal after the proposal in Nantucket. What I am a proponent of, and what I'm proposing this evening, is a tax on the sale of real estate that would be earmarked totally for affordable and attainable housing. And I'm proposing a 0.5% tax on sales north of $2 million. And then why? And that's my recommendation. Just looking at the numbers and trying to come up with what seemed to be reasonable, both for the sellers and buyers of homes in Chatham and for our local residents. This is not a property tax. This does not increase anybody's property tax. It's a tax directly on the transfer of real estate. Now, if we had assessed this tax in fiscal year 2020, where there were $112 million worth of sales north of $2 million in the town of Chatham, I'll repeat that. There were $112 million worth of sales north of $2 million. We would have put $564,000 into the Affordable and Attainable Trust Fund this fiscal year.
You cut out on that, Jeff. Could you say that number again?
Sure.
You cut out.
Sure. We had the total value of sales in the town of Chatham in fiscal year 20 over $2 million. The total value of sales in excess of $2 million was $112 million. If we tax that at 0.5%, 50 basis points, we would have put $564,000 into an affordable and attainable trust fund. This would give the town the opportunity to build and replenish the trust fund over time, and allows us to be, I think, more responsive to changing market and changing market conditions and opportunities. Again, 100% dedicated to affordable and attainable housing. Now, again, I've stolen shamelessly here. I was introduced to this concept because my son purchased property down in Brooklyn, Manhattan, and they've had this tax now since 1989, and it has not, at least non-COVID related, had slowed down the transactions in the city of New York one iota. Nor has the imposition of this tax slowed down the transfer of sales of property in Nantucket. Truro and P-Town have very similar type funding mechanisms in place. Now, and this is purely me talking, but I like a cutoff at $2 million. I think it affords some protection for our year-round residents that may not have property of 2 million or in excess of 2 million. And that's, north of our, what I understand to be our mean assessed value of $1 million at present. We saw numbers related to 2015 that the average sales price in 15 was $725. Well, right now, I believe the average assessed value of our homes in Chatham is about $1 million. So that's double the assessed value. Now, again, if we had it in place for this year, it would have generated $564K. Now, I also like 0.5 basis point, 0.5%, as not being terribly onerous for those that have transactions at $2 million and north. And let me say up front and be very frank with you in the town that I am not a tax and spend guy. I've been around a long time, and you've seen me really look at my role in public life as to save tax dollars for citizens. And I think I've done that in the past and have a history and a track record of so doing, especially with respect to our regional school system. But I believe this tax, especially, or this transfer tithing, especially if it's earmarked for affordable and attainable housing, really strikes a chord with me in that we are now affording ourselves an ongoing revenue stream so that we can address what has become, frankly, perhaps our most onerous issue in town. Because without young people in town, we don't have a school system, we don't have an elementary school, we don't have the folks that live here and work here year round, and that staff everything we've got going in terms of municipal services and private services as well. So I'm not all hell-bent on taxing us or taxing ourselves, but for those that can afford it, $2 million real estate deals, 0.5% to be earmarked to go to affordable housing, I think is a reasonable request. It taxes or potentially taxes those that are here to take advantage of our beautiful town and might be speculating in real estate, might be flipping real estate, etc. This is not an easy thing to do. This takes a home rule petition. It takes approval by town meeting, and it also takes approval by the state legislature. So it's not something that we would do overnight. It's not something I'm looking for a vote even tonight. I am looking for some gauge or assess the appetite of this board for the concept, number one, and also whether or not we'd like to ask our town council to draft a home rule petition to see what it would look like and what it would entail. So I'll end there. I think it's a mechanism that's worked very well in other higher end communities, if you will, and I think it's one that would translate very well to the town of Chatham. And I know that, you know, there'll be many that'll be naysayers and, you know, maybe the real estate industry won't like it, et cetera. However, again, it has been very successfully introduced in other municipalities that are similar in nature to Chatham. So I throw it out there for your interest in perusal and your comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you putting this all together and giving us this perspective on the real numbers. The idea that something higher than or north, as you put it, of $2 million would seem a very fair assessment. And I think that our local real estate community probably recognizes that we have an issue here as well. And talking to some of them, showing that they have concerns for affordable and attainable housing. I think whatever pushback we get might be from the more lobbying aspects of this, similar to what happened when we were working on the OPEB trust issue. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. And I actually think, should we actually have affordable and attainable housing, have developments that in fact it will make our town even more attractive as a town as we go on. So one could argue, I think, vehemently the other side. And our discussion this evening about CPC funding is very important. And I think that's a great booster shot, if you will. We need that. We need to provide the affordable trust, the principle, if you will, to do some things that we'd like to do. But this is more of a longer term mechanism to provide for affordable and attainable housing as we go forward. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'll keep the rest of my comments short to say that I support it. And I want to see this move forward. And I'll just turn it over to the next speaker, which will be Peter. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I consider myself a consumer expert, if I could do that, on real estate transactions. And I wouldn't say expert, I'd say an experienced person. I mean, in my career, I moved many, many times, bought and sold because I had to move, you know, upwards of 6 to 8 homes and had to rent and so forth. And I'm very familiar with real estate taxes, with transfer taxes. Just to say, conceptually, I've always had a problem with taxes similar to this. For a number of reasons, and I'll go through a number of reasons that I have used or I think about at times, and then see whether they really apply as much to our situation here. And I'll try not to be long. I'll give a couple of quick ones because you hear this a lot. You know, transfer taxes are regressive. In other words, people at the lower end are paying more than those at the upper end of the housing market, and you would then also limit the sales of homes, and it's going to hurt your property values and so forth and your sales. I like the one that talks about, especially in my case, a household that moves frequently for whatever does not derive additional benefits or place additional burdens on public services as compared to someone who does not move at all. I wrote that up a long time ago, and that fit our family to a core. There's also the transfer taxes. They're a larger burden on a small share of the folks that are there rather than spreading it out over everyone else. Now, all of those there's a certain sense of truth to that. What I would say though is I believe we need a funding stream for affordable and especially attainable housing. And to me, it comes do I stay to my ideology, or do I think about what we really need in this town as a streaming fund? And I think that we should look at every option and not discount anything up front if we can, unless it's really, I don't want to call it stupid or dumb, but has a problem. So I don't have a problem moving forward with this. I think the real problem for us, critical problem, and I'll say it again and again, is affordable and attainable housing, and also our senior population, which also requires a certain amount of affordable and attainable housing. So I can move forward on this. I think something over $2 million is not bad. I just happened to get something through the mail. The average, this is over the last 12 months, according to the one real estate agent who's sending stuff out that says, please put your house up for sale because we don't have enough properties. Unit sales, we had 283 in Chatham, and the average sale price was 1.192 million. All right. The median sale price, now that's median, right? So you don't take an average, was 863. That was up over 4 or 5% from last year. And the average listing prices was over $2 million. So what, as Jeff said, we're probably in the $900,000 range for what we're doing, and putting a levy over with homes that are over $2 million. Yeah, it does affect that. But balance that against what we get. It's $500,000, and the amount that you have. There may be someone that's really going to hurt. But I'll tell you, you go from state to state. My first house I ever bought was in New Jersey, and you take a look at their taxes, very, very high. You look at New York, their taxes are very high. Ours wouldn't still be. And who do we have living here? People that come from those areas, and Connecticut, which is even worse. So in any case, I think we should move ahead with it. We should look at it. We should look at what it's going to be. And unless there's something really, really terrible, I'm going to move differently than what I would normally have done and what I did about a year and a half ago. I think it's more important to get money into attainable and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Corey?
I'm supportive with continuing the conversation around this. I mean, we've had similar conversations not too long ago when we looked at OPEB funding sources. So, we know what to expect to some level, I think. We got to discuss exemptions and thresholds and what have you nots. But I do think from a long-term mechanism for funding, it is worth having a discussion. I would be a little hesitant to go over 0.5%. I think, you don't want to get too greedy. Not greedy is the wrong term, but too aggressive in some of it, because you are looking for long-term funding. But also saying that, is this going to be tax that is indefinitely done, or is there ever going to have we're going to put a sunset on it? There's some details that need to be flushed out and conversations to have. But I support having the conversation. The goal in mind is something I'm very supportive of. So I recognize there's got to be somewhat of an uphill discussion based on prior OPEB discussions. But I'm willing to have this and see if we can get it to work and move forward.
Thanks, Corey. Dean?
Yeah, thank you. And I do thank Jeff for bringing this forward and for his boldness in offering this idea. I probably come at this differently philosophically from some of my colleagues on the board. And I'm not saying you're all taxers, because I don't think that's true at all, having worked. But I don't like new taxes. I don't like earmarks generally. I did support the OPEB. I was part of the process for that with Corey and the trustees of the OPEB, but that was a legal obligation that financially had to be paid off. I know you could make a similar argument that this is a moral obligation, but I think there is a difference there. I think that a concern I have right now, a $2 million transaction would produce a tax of $100,000 if my math is, if my iPhone calculator is correct.
10,000.
That's 10,000.
10,000. 10,000.
I did 5%. I'm sorry, instead of 0.005. That was my mistake. And there are a lot of people who are on fixed incomes who have these houses that have increased dramatically in value over what they paid or what they inherited, that are going to be impacted. And you can make the argument it's the buyer that's going to wind up paying, regardless of how this statute, because we consider that under OPEB. And I do agree with Corey that whatever model legislation comes forward ought to take into account some of the items in the OPEB draft that included, as he pointed out, exemptions. For example, intrafamilial transfers probably should be exempted. And maybe a sunset, maybe even a sliding scale on the rate, as Peter was talking about. But one concern I have is that you could have the threshold set at $2 million, but eventually the average sales price of a house is going to get close to that. So maybe there needs to be a formula for adjusting that upwards. It's clear that the majority of the board wants to consider this further, and I'm not going to stand in the way of that. So if the board wants to, by consensus, and I'll join in that consensus to ask town council and staff to prepare legislation, that's fine. I think the chances of my ultimately supporting it probably aren't high, but we'll let it go from here.
Okay. Thanks,
So,
Steve.
Super.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea that we move this forward, and I appreciate that, Dean. I know your thoughts and feelings on this kind of taxation. I do want to reiterate, we have an extraordinarily challenging situation here. We have extraordinarily, beautiful place to live. It's wonderful. We've time and time again been talking all along today about the substance of who is living here in the town. I think Jeff brought up a beautiful point that Julia brought up about the idea that we oftentimes do a lot of supporting of preservation, and it's a good thing, but we're losing the people and the actually,
right
here or grew up here, and it's scattered. But we also are working on many initiatives and to try to support this. So I really want to move this forward in looking at the sliding scale issue, also the adjustment sort of idea. They're all really great ideas, and the familial transfer exemption. These are all things that we did. I'd also like to get some feedback from, at least we get out in the community and we start talking to some of the realtors and some of the business people in town and see what their feelings are about this. I have talked to a lot of realtors who are very supportive of trying to figure out an initiative for helping with more year-round housing here. I mean, there's been some obscene, real estate sales in this town that you would never have imagined 10 years ago. So it's just getting increasingly harder and harder and harder for anybody to be able to buy a house if they're two kids with a college college debt and, to get a mortgage for something here in town is nearly impossible without some sort of assistance. So let's move it forward. I've got everybody's hands up again.
I'll be quick.
Peter, I'd appreciate that. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Now, my only point, Dean mentioned that, whoever's going to pay I just want to make the point that we should make sure that we include it in there. It's either the buyer or the seller. That's the way it is most of the time. Half of my transactions, it was either split or based upon the market circumstances at a time, the buyer had to pay it, or at other financial times, the seller had to pay it. So it's kind of interesting, I mean, it's an interesting dialogue that you have in your negotiations, and when it's something less than $2 million, if you're sitting at 5, 6, 7, 8, last transaction was $1 million, it adds up. But it can be either the buyer or the seller that pays, or both.
Okay, great.
We just did.
All right. So by consensus, I think we have a really good understanding of this, and we'll move that forward. Okay. Appreciate the discussion tonight on both of these issues. Thank you both, Dean and Jeff, for bringing that forward tonight. It's great. So our last order of business tonight is public comments to discuss our business agenda items. And I see that Florence has her hand up. Florence? You may speak. I think you're muted, Florence, if you could speak.
Sorry, I said I want to thank you for increasing the amount of money going into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I would have gone to $1,500,000, but okay. I do want to, I'm sure you're aware, but one of our towns has already completed a rental. We talked about rental units being so necessary. The town of Eastham, working with Penrose Developers, has completed a project for 65 units, all full and a waiting list. Go and look at that. It's a very nice looking development if you haven't looked at it. And now the town of Orleans, also rental units at the Cape Cod 5 property using the same developer. So I think we have an opportunity to move forward, not waiting for the ideal project in the world, but certainly if the town has heard a lot about possible land in West Chatham, let's move forward and get something done. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. Well said. Anybody else? Public comments? All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah. Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. I'll just take a roll. Peter.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
And chair says aye. Thank you, everybody. This was really good work tonight. I thought the meeting with MassDOT was extremely productive, and the work on the affordable attainable housing was an amazing process tonight. So really jazzed about that. Jill, thank you and the staff for preparing and being on board tonight. Stay safe, Chatham, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.
Good night.